This is NVHA 020045. It's September the 17th, 2002. This is our 66th interview, and we're here in the home of Gus Bubenzer, who is in the Army Air Corps in World War II. Thank you very much for allowing us into your home to be able to do this interview.
You're welcome.
Let's start out with your full name.
Gus E. Bubenzer.
Okay. And what's your date of birth?
10/7/23.
3. And what was your rank at discharge?
Tech sergeant.
Okay. Well, Sergeant Bubenzer, where were you born?
Rome, Indiana.
Rome, Indiana. That's down by the Ohio, isn't it?
That's down on the Ohio River in Perry County, about 3 or 4/10 of a mile from the river. And to pinpoint it a little closer, it's 80 miles down the river from Louisville and 60 miles up the river from Evansville.
Okay. That pinpoints it pretty good.
Okay.
See, Perry County, didn't that border Spencer County?
Yes, it does.
So the Lincolns probably would have come up through that area when they...
Yes, they were real close there.
Yeah. Were there any Lincolns still left in that area?
Not that I know of.
I think the family... Now the daughter, Lincoln's sister died in childbirth, so she might have had a few children there, but then they moved on.
There was a Lincoln Park down, I can't tell you exactly where, but I think it's called Lincoln City there close. It's just a little bit north and east of Evansville.
Okay.
It's called Lincoln Park, and Lincoln had some connections there.
Okay. So were you born in your home?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that the same one you have up there in the picture?
That's where I was born and raised, right there.
Okay, we'll get that after a little while.
Mm-hmm.
There's some interesting things about that home that we'll talk about. That's a beautiful picture.
A year ago in the spring, of course, my father died when I was 13, and my mom and I stayed there in the summertime. Well, after my father passed away, I couldn't run the farm and go to school. I was getting in high school, so we left there in about 38, I guess it was, and she'd go back in the summer, but I'd stay in Tell City and work because I could find work. And eventually she left and the house was idle for years and years, and 2 years ago a storm came along and took the roof off. And if you notice, it don't have a gable, it's a kind of a sloping roof.
Yes.
And of course after the roof went off, the rain come in and it was practically shot before, but that finished it, so they tore it down.
So tell me about your mom. What was her name?
Her name was Ethel.
Ethel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What was her maiden name?
Wedding.
Ethel Wedding.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting name. What was she like?
Well, my dad, you asked about her, but I'll tell you about my dad first. He was very quiet, dry sense of humor, but my mother was a jokester.
Okay.
My dad said something to me, I just automatically did it, but I knew that my mother, she'd give a little.
And what was your dad's name?
Gus Davis E. Gus Davis E. Bubenzer.
Okay.
I was named after him.
Okay. Where was he born?
In fact, my mother, she wanted me to have his initials, G.E., capital G and a capital E.
Yeah.
Well, when I got in high school, and even when I got ready to go into service, I was in a habit of signing them name G.E. one time and Gus the next time.
Yeah.
I got ready to hire in at Remy's, and I signed my application 2 different places, one G.E. and one Gus, and I had to get a lawyer to get that straightened out.
Uh-oh. Yeah, that sure gets you in a mess, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it did.
So, where'd your dad come from originally?
Well, you know, I don't know too much about my parents because I was the 6th child, the youngest out of 6. I had 4 sisters and a brother. And by the time I could remember, my 2 oldest sisters and my brother, they had married and left home.
I see.
So I've got nieces almost as old as I am. But my dad, he was an orphan, and he was kept by, I believe it was his sister, and her husband was a doctor. And there was a Dr. Bubenzer, which I've never got it all straightened out. But I can't tell you too much about the background of my father.
So he had kind of a dry sense of humor,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
when he told you to do something, you did.
Yeah, when he told me to do something, I just automatically did it. Sometimes my mother, I'd renege a little bit, and one time she took a broom to me. So she did. I did get the point eventually, but they were kind of opposite.
Yeah.
I can tell you a funny story. We lived up in this house on this real high hill. It was a mile from Rome or any other house.
Okay.
And my mother, like I said, was a prankster, and we had a rain barrel at the end of the house, and when it would rain, that 50-gallon drum would fill up with water. If the sun shone on all day, it was a real nice bath water. Well, since we were on a hill and had a plain view of seeing anybody a mile away, we took our bath on the back porch,
Okay.
on that porch. One evening, my mother thought she'd have some fun. So my mother always wore a bonnet, but never an apron or an umbrella. She never wore an umbrella. Used an umbrella or a hat. She'd wear an apron and a bonnet, but not a hat.
Uh-huh.
So she had it all planned. And one day when he was taking his bath one evening, she come up over the hill, not up the path, but up a different part of the hill where nobody ever came from. And he looked up, and here this lady was with an umbrella and a big old hat. There was a door about as far as near to that door, but there was a window directly behind him. So he got through that window somehow. Well, she went into the old wood house and took everything off and put her in her regular clothes that she normally wears and come in, and Gus said, my dad said, Ethel, who was that woman coming over the hill?
She did have a good sense. She was a prankster, wasn't
Oh,
she?
she was. Yes, she was.
Boy. What'd your dad do for a living? Was he a farmer? Or?
My dad was a farmer, but he also was an excellent carpenter. Okay. And since he lived on the Ohio, he would build a boat once in a while. And
really?
When there was a house to be built, there was one contractor there in the area, and he'd always hire my dad.
Wow.
But basically, he was a farmer.
Okay.
And our main crop was raising potatoes. He could raise potatoes that big.
Wow. Yeah. So he was, you were what, about 11 or when he died?
I was 13 when
13?
he died.
Wow. Must be tough losing your dad at that age.
Well, it is when you're left with a farm and trying to go through school. In fact, I missed so much school one year that I had to repeat it. And that's why my mother and I decided to go to Tell City and live with my sister, because I was close to school then, and I could find a job to work in the summer. So that's what I did. I worked at a gas station. I can remember advertisement papers that we had. The kids took around and posted up so people could see 16 cents a gallon.
Yeah.
I got a job one summer on an ice truck. We delivered ice from house to house and businesses. And then I got a job in the chair factory, which was a part of the Tell City Chair Factory. You've heard of Tell City
yes.
Furniture.
Yes.
Well, that's where I worked for until I got out of high school.
What'd you do in the factory?
In the factory, I glued boards together.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not very good ventilation and all
No,
the
and that
safety
glue,
stuff they have today.
you was almost stuck to your job permanently by the time the day was over.
I'll bet.
Yeah,
Sounds kind of messy.
it was really.
So can you describe your dad's physical features to us? What?
He was very tall and slim, very
Okay.
slim, tall.
And what about your mom?
My mom was kind of short and a little heavier.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. My dad I'm not bragging, but he was a man that everybody had very good thoughts about him. He wouldn't gossip. And back then, we had 2 general stores in Rome, and every evening, men from 10-mile radius would come in and they'd sit on that store and talk till bedtime and go home. And naturally, there'd be a little gossip once in a while. When gossip started, my dad was gone.
Oh.
He always said, if you couldn't say anything good about anybody, just keep your mouth shut. So he would leave, and he was well thought of.
Oh, that's been handed down through the family then.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah. You had a brother and some sisters. Tell me about them. What are their names and what became of them in life?
My oldest sister was Irene, and she married a fellow by the name of Walters, and he was a school teacher, and she was just a housekeeper all her life. My next oldest sister was Aline, who married a Siebert. We called him Seibert down there, but up over in Dayton, where they live. They call them Siebert. She was a homemaker, and her husband worked in the tool and die at Delco Products was the name of the.
Okay.
It's a GM plant, but Delco Products
Dayton.
over there. Then my third oldest sister was. She was a nurse. She was going to school at Indianapolis at Methodist Hospital, and my dad passed away. And my youngest sister was a smoker and got emphysema and died at 57.
Oof. That's not very much fun.
No.
You know, I watched my uncle go that way, and
Yeah.
that just broke my heart to see a
Yeah.
man
Yeah.
who'd been so active all his life, just
Yeah.
could barely walk across the room.
Yeah.
So did we get your brother?
Oh, I forgot my brother. My brother was he worked at a state hospital in Evansville after he left home, and then he married and bought a farm right adjacent to our farm.
Okay.
And he farmed all his life, and he died with a heart attack at the age of 67, I believe, and that's probably been 10 years ago. I can't remember for sure. And he has a son, and he's married and has a family, and all of them are gone now. All my sisters and my brother are gone. I'm the only one left.
Yeah. Are you picking up that saw? Okay. Excuse me a minute. Let me close the door here. I think
Oh,
get a little competition.
yeah.
Handyman here. So where'd you go to school?
I went 2 years at Candleton, and 3 miles down the road was Tell City, and I went my other 2 years there.
Okay. Remember any of your teachers?
I remember grade school teachers better than I do my high school teachers. My grade school teacher was, my 8th grade school teacher was Helen Pontrick, who is still living. I think she's 87 now. And Clifford Swift, he was a coach. And Davison, I can't think of the first name, he was a superintendent of schools in Candleton. I can't think of anybody right offhand. I'd have to think a long time. And then in Tell City, I had a teacher by the name of Peters that taught manual training. I had a lady teacher by the name of Yerito. You've got me there. I can't remember anymore.
Well, that's pretty good.
Well,
That's very good.
well.
What were your favorite subjects in school?
Well, since my dad was a carpenter and he let me use his tools, they were hand tools. He had some tools that he had made. He had a saw, a table saw, which he made. The top was made out of wood, and the guide he made out of wood and metal. And he had a lathe. It was a metal lathe, but he used it mostly for wood. And we didn't have electricity at that time. He had a gas engine in his shop, and had what we call a belt drive up there, a bunch of pulleys.
Oh, yeah.
And he could run everything. And when I got old enough, after he felt that I would use safety or think of safety, he'd let me use anything I wanted to. So I was pretty good in wood. In fact, there's nothing in here, but, well, I made those brackets there, those things on the wall, and there's different things in the other end. Now, my dad made this little table. I told you he was made mostly with hand tools.
Wow.
But
Very professional.
I've been pretty handy with tools, but except I converted myself over to power tools.
You don't use the belt drive and the handsaw anymore.
No.
Well, how in the world do you cut a board straight with a handsaw? And I
Well,
can barely do it.
you have to have a good saw, and it takes a lot of practice.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of practice.
It has to be sharp too. That helps.
Yeah, that's right. It has to be sharp.
What kind of things did you do as a kid for fun?
Well, when I was old enough to work, I worked for there was a fella in Rome that had the largest farm in there, and he was the only guy at the time that had automobile. He had 2 automobiles, but he would hire, probably 20 men, and there'd be at least 12 of them had their own teams of horses. Everything was done with team of horses. And I worked for him for $1 a day. Then they thrashed a lot of wheat, and when they thrashed wheat, anybody that had wheat all the farms would join and they'd help each other.
Okay.
And that was one of the most enjoyable things I ever did, because every day, wherever you were thrashing, all the women went together. Wasn't it fun for the women? But all the men went in and they had tables full of food, old-fashioned wash tubs that you used to wash in full of iced tea, and it was really a treat to go to a thrashing meal. We called it a thrashing meal.
You know, my dad talked about it. He said
Yeah.
that the tables would just bow from
Yes.
all the way to the food.
There were probably 8 farmers in Rome that raised wheat, and every one of them thrashed, and only one thrashing machine, so they all joined together, and when one farmer thrashed, they went to the next place, and they all went together until all the thrashing was done. And you always got those meals.
Kind of miss something, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Doing it the way we do
Yes, we
now.
do. And as a kid, we used to take a piece of wood and put a cross on the bottom of it, and we'd find a steel hoop, and we'd roll that, and of course you could tilt that board that you were using, or stick you were using, and guide it. I don't know why that was so much fun, but I probably rolled one of them miles and miles and miles. We used to roll tires, and we'd get on a hill, and if we were small enough to get in a tire, and somebody give us a roll, and we'd go down over the hill inside of a tire.
Yeah.
And at that time, there was very few radios when I was growing up. And when we got up in school, why, most everybody, there wasn't over about, I would say, 15 houses in Rome itself, and most of the population came from the outskirts, you know, out in the country. But somebody would decide to have a party, and we'd hang a bunch of lanterns up on a clothesline, and we'd play simple games like drop the handkerchief.
Sure.
And musical chair, you'd get up and they'd play some kind of music, and you'd walk, and when that music quit, you had to sit down. Somebody's gonna miss their chair, be without a chair. Just simple games like that.
Bet you were never bored.
I was never bored. Now, my sister that lived over in Dayton, who I said was Aline, they had a 28 Chevrolet coupe, and they would come home about twice a year for vacation. And my dad had an old Scott Atwater radio.
Okay.
And Alfred would pull his Chevy up and run a jumper wire over from his battery in the car to the radio, and we'd hear Amos and Andy in the news.
I've never heard of that kind of arrangement. That's pretty good.
And it was a battery set, and I don't think we ever had our own batteries, so that was a once or twice a year thing. Didn't happen every day.
You remember what the news was?
Well, you didn't get much national news then. It was local news. Yeah.
We can go down to the general store for that.
Yeah, you get that at the general store. You most certainly could. Some that you couldn't get over the radio. You most certainly could.
Oh boy. Well, how'd your family do in the Great Depression?
Well, we got by because we was on a farm, and we didn't have a whole lot, but we had plenty to eat, and we always managed to have clothes, so we got by all right.
Well, it sounded like between the work and the games, you had a pretty good childhood.
Yeah, I don't regret any of that. What you never had, you don't miss.
That's true. That's true. Well, you get so many kids today, they have everything, every electronic gizmo imaginable,
Well,
and they're always bored.
I've got a grandson, and he's got television is his main entertainment because he's got all these games.
Yeah.
Now, that may be all right, but I guess I'm a little old-fashioned. I kind of frown on too much of that.
Yeah. Well, your imagination can do a whole lot more than what something will do for you.
Well, that's true.
So when you were in school, did you have any kind of particular ambition in life? Did you know what you wanted to do when you got out?
No, sir, that's something I never thought about. Of course, World War II, when I graduated in 1942, World War II was in progress, and I knew I was going to have to go to service. I'd been going with my wife all through high school. I rode a bicycle for 2 years, 18-mile round trip, maybe 3 times a week to see her.
Yeah. Probably in pretty good shape too, weren't you?
as soon as I graduated, I headed right for Anderson because I had a sister up here and they were hiring at Delco Remy.
Okay.
So I came up here and worked, I think in 2 weeks I was working.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my wife's father had passed away also. So we got married November the 1st in 42. And February of 43 is when Uncle Sam got me.
Well, it didn't last long, did
It
it?
didn't last very long.
What?
So she went back home and lived with her parents, which was a blessing because her two brothers had to go to service. And her father was having many strokes and would get over them and manage to work, but he was down a lot of the time. So she did a lot of the men's jobs.
How did your brothers fare in the war?
Her older brother, who is just a couple weeks older than I am, he went to South Pacific.
Okay.
He was a crew chief on I believe a B-24.
Okay.
Her younger brother also went to the Pacific, and he was a Marine, and he was on the 6th wave that went in on Iwo Jima, and he saw the flag raising, the real popular flag raising picture that you see quite often.
And what are their names?
Arthur Lee is a younger, their name was Young, Arthur Lee Young, and William R. Young.
Okay.
The older boy was William, and the younger one was Arthur Lee.
Okay.
And they both got home. They both came back.
That's good. That's good. They
Yeah.
weren't the kind of places that you get home
No,
from too
that's
easy.
right.
There's
No,
a
that's
lot of them
true.
didn't make it back.
Mhm.
Wow. So tell me about meeting your wife. You were in school or something? You met her in school?
I think I was a freshman in high school, and she came home with a girlfriend to stay all night. And the girlfriend lived right over the hill from where I lived.
Yeah.
And I met her, and we hit it off, and I went with her all 4 years of high school.
You knew right from the get-go she was the one.
That's right. In fact, I never actually dated another girl.
Wow. How long have you been married now?
Be 60 years, 1st of November.
Well, it'll probably last now.
I think so. I'm hoping so. We got used to one another.
Yeah.
Somebody the other day asked me, said, "How old are you and your wife?" And I said, "We're old enough to be antiques, but we're not valuable."
That's a good way of putting it. Wow. Leaving her to go to the service must have been pretty tough.
Well, it was
Just got married,
because
just getting settled.
I just got married, but I kind of had the feeling the quicker I got in, the quicker I'd get back. So I didn't have anything to keep me out. I was in good health. So I knew I didn't have a choice. So I thought, well, just get in there and get it over with.
Yeah.
Hope for the best. So that's what I did.
So where'd you take her on dates in high school?
Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't have a car, and we didn't ride double on that bicycle. So we would go to the ball games and just, well, she had two brothers, and we just hit it off. I was the same as a brother to them, and they were brothers to me. And I didn't get into this because I thought it was too rough, but they used to have corn cob fights. They'd take a stick and take a corn cob and wet it in a rain barrel or in a bucket of water and get it wet. Then they'd throw it, take the stick and throw it, you know.
Yeah.
And I tell you, if one of them corn cobs hit you upside the face, you knew that her brothers did that, and then they'd go back in the creek. And of course, the girls or nobody could go back there because they didn't wear very good bathing suits back there. But you had to come up with your own ideas because there wasn't much to do really. Yeah. But really, you didn't have too much idle time when you were large enough to work because on a farm there was always something to do.
So, what was your favorite job on the farm?
I loved to work with the horses, and of course my dad, he had 3 horses that he worked, and I got old enough that I could do anything with them, and he did. Anything, I loved to have something I ride on, like a mowing machine or a what we call not a harrow, but you had to walk behind it, but we'd have a float or a drag. It was heavy boards that were nailed together that you drug over the ground to kind of smooth it out, and you could ride on that.
Okay.
But actually, I can tell you better what I hated were making hay. That barn, there's a barn, and when you got ready to unload the hay, there was a track with a fork on it up in the top of the barn, and you'd take a horse and pull you had a fork that you stuck in the hay, and it would pull it up to the top of the barn, move it either direction you wanted to go depending on which way you was pulling it. And it had a trip rope, and it'd trip it in the center of the barn, but you had to get it out under the eaves, like shed type.
Ah.
Well, that was just, you had to get down and almost crawl and push and shove, and of course there was chaff and it'd get down your neck and it would itch and you'd hot and sweaty. I hated hay. And he raised sheep, and he had milk cows, and he had horses. So he raised all his hay and feed. And we had alfalfa, and I hated that alfalfa because it would bear about every 30 or 40 days through the summer. I hated hay.
Yeah.
One good thing, we'd go to the Ohio River at the end of the day, and we'd go in swimming. That was where we had our bath and got refreshed up a little bit.
That worked out. How close were you to the river?
From my house, from my house to the center of town was a mile, and from the center of town to the river was 3 or 4/10 of a mile.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple miles you'd be in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that worked out. Yeah, when we break it, before we start with the next tape, we'll go ahead and get a picture of the barn and the house. Where were you when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
I've thought about that, and I can't remember where I was. I can't remember that. I really can't.
For some fellows it was very vivid, and others they can't remember it all. They just...
Well, I remember when it happened, and I remember watching it, but just exactly where I was and at the time, the exact time, I do not remember that.
Do you remember at all what you were thinking when you heard about it, or?
Well, it was a horrible sight to see when they showed the pictures there. But really, I don't know why, but I just don't have that much memory of what you're asking. I don't.
Some do and some don't.
Well.
That's what I ask. Oh, did you have any childhood heroes? Cowboys or aviators or local folks or?
No, because where I lived, there was once in a while somebody come in and show a silent movie, and I can remember see one or two of those. One thing that I did think of, you asked me what I really enjoyed. Back when I was a kid, and I was just old enough to remember this real well, there would be showboats come down the Ohio River.
Oh, really?
And it would be a vaudeville show, and they'd have popcorn and soft drinks and everything. They always come at night. And we had a ferry at Rome up until World War II, and then it was discontinued because they started putting bridges in across the Ohio, more of them. But I got to go to that showboat, and I thought that was the greatest thing in the world.
Wow. I've never talked to anybody who saw a showboat. I didn't know what the time period was on those even.
And when I got a little older in high school, we had excursion boats that come down. One of them was the Idyllic, which burnt, and they replaced it, and there's still an Idyllic, and they still operate. There were two of them, and I can't remember the other one, but they had I call it a calliope, and some say a calliope. I can't pronounce it.
Calliope?
Yeah. They would come down, and of course, if it was dark, they had hundreds of lights on there, and they'd play that calliope. And I looked forward to that. And there was a retired riverboat captain that run a general store in Rome, and he took me twice, and that was great.
Wow.
That was probably the highlight of anything I'd done for a good time, yes.
Do you remember his name?
Joe Coomer.
Joe Coomer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I've always liked a calliope.
Oh, I did. I loved it.
There's just something about it that is very appealing.
Yeah.
Wow, that's neat.
Yeah.
So you were drafted, you say?
I was drafted, yes.
Okay. And kind of show me the path. Where'd you go? You got the letter, and then what happened?
I got the letter, and I was sworn in up here at one of the buildings here in Anderson. Then I was sent to Fort Knox, not Fort Knox, Fort Harrison.
Garrison?
And I was down there 3 days, got some shots, and from Fort Harrison I was sent to St. Petersburg, Florida. We were only 20 minutes away from St. Petersburg, but we were out in the boondocks. And I think basic training lasted 6 weeks, and we couldn't have any passes. We lived in tents. There wasn't a wooden building out there anywhere. And I've often wondered exactly where I was, but I've never found out.
Never quite figured it out.
But we were only 20 minutes from St. Petersburg, and my wife's oldest brother, William Bill, that I told you about a while ago, he was taking basic training, only he was in St. Pete living in a hotel and doing his all of his exercises out on a parking lot. So I always kidded Bill about it. Well, why did you get a nice hotel and I had to live in a tent? They did all their training.
So, a tent in St. Petersburg sounds like you probably had a lot of mosquitoes.
It was March when we went down there, and it was cold.
Okay.
And our drill field from where we were in the tents, I would say it was about 3 miles. And we made as many as 3 trips a day going back there. We'd get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and march to this drill field and take our exercises, calisthenics. Then we'd go back for what they call a dress parade, get in Class A uniform, and we'd go back for this dress parade. Then we'd go back to our tents, and later in the evening maybe we'd go back for more training. Now that wasn't every day, but sometimes we did that. So we accumulated several miles of walking while I was in basic training.
Did it seem necessary at the time?
No, I thought it was foolish, but I learned a lot of things in the Army that I thought was foolish.
Yeah. Well, you're thinking all that good bicycle riding you did to court your wife, that would have put you in pretty good shape.
I was in good shape, but that was a lot of walking.
Oh, did I ask her name?
Lavera.
Lavera?
L-A and then a capital V-E-R-A.
Lavera, and the maiden name was?
Well, Young. Y-O-U-N-G. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Lavera Young.
Yeah.
So, at any time while you were in training, did you get to see her? Did she get to come with you any?
Yes. After basic training, we were sent, and also her brother were sent to Gulfport, Mississippi.
Okay.
But before we were sent, we had to fill out a questionnaire about what we would like to do and what we thought we could qualify for, what would we be best at. Well, I'd only been to high school, so naturally I said trucks or vehicles, motor vehicles.
Okay.
Well, they sent me to airplane mechanic school. They sent me to Gulfport, Mississippi, and it was a very good school. I enjoyed it and I liked it. And after I was settled in real good, I was able to go on permanent duty, permanent party they call it. I could live off the base, but I couldn't take any meals, or I wasn't there at night. At the end of the school day, I would go, and we were in a little apartment down on the beach, and she was down there with me a while.
Oh, that's nice.
And then
That's almost like a honeymoon, a little bit.
Yeah, you want me to continue now?
Sure.
And the school was, I believe, 6 months. And I really enjoyed it because it was airplane engines, it was electrical system, it was hydraulics, it was propellers, it was skin repair, it was anything that a plane requires.
Wow.
And I graduated from there, and they told me that I'd excelled in the phase of hydraulics, and they was going to make me a hydraulic specialist. And they said I'd probably be going to Chanute Field, Illinois.
Okay.
Well, that made me real happy, but they said, now watch the bulletin board every morning, and because you'll be up for shipment. Well, this is where I found out the Army don't always they don't always live up to their words. I was on there for gunnery school.
Uh-oh.
So I went in, and you know, in the Army, when they ask you to do something, you do it. You ask questions later. You never ask questions before. You do wait till you've done it. So I went in and I said, hey, you told me I was going to be a hydraulic specialist. He said, well, right now they need gunners. So you're going to gunnery school. So I went to Kingman, Arizona. And I was out there for 6 weeks. Then I found out I was going to be assigned to a bomb group, but I got a 21-day delay en route to come home and to end up at Woodward, back at Woodward, Oklahoma. So
Okay.
I came home, and that was my first furlough.
Okay.
21 days at home.
Did you come back to see your mom and?
Yeah, I saw all my relation and was with my wife for those days. And then I had to leave and go to Woodward, Oklahoma, and that's where I joined the bomb group.
Woodward, you say?
Woodward, Oklahoma.
So tell me about
Not very far from, I was trying to think.
Tulsa or Oklahoma City?
Yeah, close to Oklahoma City.
Okay.
Right.
Tell me about that place. What was it like?
Gunnery school was, it was a lot of fun because that's where we really did a lot of flying. And we started out with just simple shooting shotguns at clay pigeons. They were stationary targets. Then they started using the, what do they call the, when they're shooting the clay pigeons. They would have them, we shot at the clay pigeons, and then they put a target on a little railroad car that would run it down through the field out here, and you'd fire at that. Then after you got through all your training on the ground, you went up in an airplane, and you had a plane up there pulling a big white sheet, probably, maybe 30 feet long and 6 feet wide. And we had to fire at that. And we used colored tracer bullets. That's how they could tell who was hitting, who was making the hit, see? And that was kind of funny because every once in a while somebody get excited and they'd shoot a couple of rounds in the tail of a tow plane. When that happened, you were kicked back several weeks in school, several days in school, and you got a good chewing out.
Yeah.
It was rare, but it happened.
Can't imagine they'd be too happy about that.
No. But it was kind of rough because they kept you awful busy.
So how'd you do?
Well, they made a gunner out of it. I was called an engineer gunner because I went through the mechanical end of it and also the gunnery. So
Okay.
when I finally went overseas, in the States before we went over, I was a mechanic, and I did a lot of flying, cross-country flying, but I had to be called to once in a while I'd be called to the flight line and have to do mechanical work.
Yeah.
And then when I got overseas, flying combat, that eliminated the mechanical work. I just had to do my gunnery missions.
Yeah. Well, that's quite a range of skills you picked up in a short period of time.
Well, I wasn't sorry after it was all over because I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I learned things that maybe I wouldn't have learned otherwise.
That's true.
I got to be, in fact, I did a lot of mechanical work after that. Even though I was working at Remy's, I did it as on the sideline for friends mostly, and I loved it.
But would any of that translate into working on cars and trucks? Or?
I didn't work on many trucks, but I worked on a lot of cars.
Yeah.
And I worked until they come out with a computer. That's when I quit doing my own work.
Yeah, they
After the
kind
computer come out, that eliminated me.
pretty much.
Yeah, unless you wanted to go into full business and learn all of it, but it's too late in life for that.
I used to be able to mess up a car pretty good when I worked on it, and now I can't even do that. So.
Yeah, well, I started out as tune-up, and then I did a few overhauls. Well, my garage is a car and a half, and it wasn't large enough, and I went back to tune-up and brake work and just simple jobs.
But during your training phase, what was your favorite base? Did you have a base that you liked better than others?
I tell you, in my schooling at Gulfport, I loved it there because when you started school, you were excused from a lot of extra duties. You didn't have KP and guard duty and anything. You had barracks inspection every morning, and then if you got through it okay, you went to school, and it was the same thing over. So it was not anything else. I just loved the school because the school was so well designed. They'd show you, say, an actuating cylinder, and an actuating cylinder is a hydraulic unit. That's what these you see on these log splitters where they split wood, you know. Right. And it's a hydraulic unit that converts energy into power. They'd have an actual cutaway of that. cut it right in two, and you could see all the insides of everything. Everything that we did down there was cut in two, and you could see it. You didn't have to stand and look at how does it work or read about it. You could actually see it.
Yeah.
Of course, it wasn't in operation when it was cut in two, but you could see what made it work.
That
You
would
could
make
see the
sense.
cylinder, you could see the piston inside and everything. And we worked on airplane engines, that was part of it, and they would give you a torque wrench. Everything had to be torqued, but if you was really good and wanted a high grade, you'd torque it by guess, and if you got it right, you got a high grade.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times over in jungles or maybe where you'd be, they wouldn't always have the tools, and you had to do, you know, a screwdriver and baling wire like the farmers used to do.
Coming up on a farm, that probably helped out too.
But I always loved airplanes, and of course, there was plenty of airplanes there at Gulfport. And while we were flying, when we got in the last phase of our school, they took us up on a B-17. We got to fly for the first time.
Taking a picture here of the barn that you hated to stuff with hay.
Oh yeah.
Is there anything left of the barn now?
Yes, the barn is in good shape. My brother's son took the farm over, and he kind of remodeled it and keeps it up in shape. And he works in Evansville, but he has cattle up there, and he comes up there a couple times a week. So he's got automatic feeders and everything, and so it's in good shape.
Well, why don't you come on in here and show us what you were telling me earlier about where you were married.
Well, I gotta get you in the picture at least, so I'm gonna make sure you're in there.
Please do.
You look great.
There you are, see?
Hooey, turn it around.
Okay. Now then, you tell us again how you met, just in case.
Well, where we met in high school, and we were sitting, I think I was behind him, and the girlfriend that I was going home with, to spend the weekend with, asked who if there was somebody I'd like to have a date with, and I said, well, I think he's cute. And we had the date that night, and that was it. He rode the bicycle. He rode the bicycle. How many miles?
Well, it
Winter
was
and summer to
5 plus 3.
plus whatever.
It was around 19 miles time I got home.
Wow.
When he left at night, it was a bit cold, you know, and I was always so worried about him, but he said he never got cold. He
Had a warm heart.
pedaled on.
Yeah, had his love to keep him warm.
I guess.
When you're a kid, nothing bothers you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think back to the things I did as a kid. I couldn't do it now, but I loved it then. Like I said, I was my dad's right hand,
Yeah.
and because my brothers were younger, and then when they got old enough to go in service, why, by that time we were married when my brothers both went in. And I stayed at home on the farm with Mom and helped the neighbor guys.
That'd be tough having a husband and 2 brothers out in harm's way. That.
If you weren't around then, but at that time we had little squares,
Right.
and each square had a star in it. And you hung those in your window, and there were 3 hanging in my mom's house. One for him and my 2 brothers. And they hung there, you know, and I'd like to know what happened to those. But anyway, I got to go spend some time with him when he was in service. But while he was gone overseas, I all through, except those times I was with him in service, I was at home working, helping. And I worked for General Electric. They had a plant there that was, they had set up in an old barn, and it was not heated. And in the winter, we wore our overcoats, our gloves, our caps, our boots. And I welded grids in the light bulb, in the bulbs,
Yeah.
if you know what they are.
Yeah.
And made piecework.
Well, it's probably good that you kept so busy.
Oh, I was busy. I was busy, but I wrote him a letter every night. In fact, I wrote 2 letters every night. I'd write to him, and then I'd write to one of my brothers, and then the next night I'd write to the other brother, and then I'd write to some of the guys that were in service.
Well, that's
And
nice.
I averaged about 2 letters every night.
Wow.
That's great.
And I don't know how I could do it, what was to say, you know, because we were there on the farm and it was kind of the same old story, but he wanted to hear from me, I guess, like I wanted to hear from him.
Mail was important in
Yeah.
the service.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
You're supporting me more than it now.
Yeah, I bet it was.
Mhm.
Did you get mail on a pretty regular basis when you were?
Yes, our mail, it worked out real good. It sure did.
And then when I got that horrible letter that day, that was the worst news of my life.
Was that a telegram that you received? or-
I got a letter in the morning and a telegram in the afternoon, and that he had been missing. And then about once a month, I'd get a letter from the chaplain saying that they were sorry, but there was no news. And
Was the first letter from a chaplain,
no, I
a Red
I
Cross?
think
The
it's the War
first-
Department.
it was
wasn't
War Department,
I think so.
whoever, yeah, it was War Department.
It should have been anyway.
Mm-hmm. It was.
Well, that
I
had
still
to be tough.
got that.
Do you?
Made scrapbook of all these things. Kept scrapbook. I remember one time I thought I could be outsmart Uncle Sam, you know.
Yeah.
And I sent him a stick of chewing gum in a letter. And on the inside of the wrapper, I said, "Where are you?" I thought maybe he could answer me in the same way, but I never got an answer.
Didn't work out,
No.
did
Well, I didn't, all our letters were censored, so I knew better than to answer that.
it?
All I knew that he was going from New York, you know.
Right.
That he was leaving from there, and after that, he can tell you a story better than I can. But it was hard being home, not knowing anything, and our Wayne was born on 16th of April, and his plane went down the 27th of May. But he did know he had a son. He had my mom,
Yeah.
bless her heart, wrote to him. And I'm thankful that I was always thankful she did that because, he was born at home during the flood. And I was in labor for 24 hours. And it was hard having him. And I would go to the closet and get his leather jacket to hold. And my mom or my sis would come along and take it away from him. I wanted that leather jacket of his, and I can smell that leather jacket yet. That was, stayed in our closet till he came home.
You had been a baby with your blanket.
Yeah.
That's quite a story.
And then when Gwen was born, he had yellow jaundice, and back then that was pretty prevalent, but they didn't know a lot to do. And he cried, and the doctor said, "Don't let that baby cry." So I had a cousin, and he would come over, and he would walk the floor and hold Wayne and carry him, and then one of the neighbors would come up and carry him and walk with him so he wouldn't cry till he'd fall asleep. But we had, his first year was tough. We had a tough time with him. But he made it, he's a strong fellow now.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he,
Must have carried him just right.
well, something happened right, the Lord was with him.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Glad to.
That's a good addition to the story.
I gotta get you focused again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we got you now.
All right. Your first ride in an airplane. Can you?
The first ride in an
Tell us about
airplane was at the end of the last phase of AM school, airplane mechanics school. They took us up in a B-17. That was first time to be up in an airplane.
What did you think of that?
It was great. It was really great. I really enjoyed
Really
it.
enjoy flying.
I had some thoughts about it because about 3 phases ahead of my class, there was B-17 went up, and on takeoff it was just got airborne, 2 engines stalled, and it mushed right into the ground, belly landed, went into a woods and burst into a flame, but not until every single person was off of it.
No kidding.
Nobody was hurt.
Oh, man.
Not a single person.
Well, God
That was
riding
just-
with that.
Pardon?
God was riding with that.
Yes,
plane.
that's right. That's right.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I thought getting that big old B-17, I said, I hope this thing, if it takes off, it keeps going.
keep on going.
And it did, but that was my first airplane ride.
Just kind of wondered, farm boy from the
That's
Ohio
right.
River, if
That's
you'd
right.
be much of an
That's
airplane
right.
fellow.
That's right.
So you were talking about, before we took this break here, you were talking about the last schooling that you were in.
That was a gunnery school. That
Gunnery
was
school.
my last school.
Okay. And you graduated out of gunnery school, let's see, this was in Oklahoma?
This was in Kingman, Arizona.
Kingman, Arizona.
Kingman, Arizona, where the school, gunnery school was,
Okay.
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And then where'd you go from there?
Then that's when I got the 21 delay,
All right,
21
all
day
right.
delay en route, and I got to go home. And then I went to Woodward, Oklahoma, and that's where I was assigned to the 409th Bomb Group
Okay.
as an engineer gunner.
And where'd you go from there?
From there, while I was there, I worked on the flight line as a mechanic, and then we did a lot of cross-country missions, just fly from one place to another.
Yeah.
And then from there, we went to DeRidder, Louisiana, and that's where we were preparing to ship overseas.
Okay.
And from DeRidder, we boarded the train. We didn't know which way we were going. All the windows were blacked out till we got to Camp Shanks, New York. I'm sure you've heard of that
Camp
place.
Shanks. Oh yeah, Camp Shanks.
Mhm.
So how long were you there?
I only remember about 3 days because I know one night there was about 6 of us. We got a pass and we went into New York City and got to see some of the city. And I think about the 3rd or 4th day we shipped out. We boarded a ship called the Mauritania.
Oh really?
Mhm.
No kidding.
Yeah,
I'll be darned.
yeah.
That was quite a ship in its day.
Yeah, well, I've got a picture of it. It's a big old ship, and it was fast. It had 2 big smokestacks, and they said it had enough power that the speed was great enough we didn't have to have an escort. We were
Yeah.
on our own.
Yeah.
Worst part was seasick, which it didn't faze me at all, but I never saw as many seasick men in my life. And when we got, it took us 10 days to get there, but Liverpool, England's where we landed. The worst thing that we got into a storm that lasted 3 days solid,
Oh no.
and everybody was seasick.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, it was terrible.
How was the food?
Don't remember much about the food. What I do remember is they run out of whatever they used to convert salt water into pure water, and I know I went and tried to take a shower, and I got pure salt water, and you know way you can get it off. You wear it off.
Yeah.
But the food was all right.
Was it British food or American food?
No, it was American food.
Okay. Now some of those British ships, you get
Yeah.
the British food,
Yeah.
and the guys
Yeah,
didn't care
this-
much for that.
This was, as I remember, it was American food.
Well, back up just a little bit here. What do you think of New York City?
Well, it was a big deal to me. I'd never been there before, and
It's bigger than Rome.
slightly. Yeah, it was bigger. We got, I was trying to think, we went to a nightclub, and I got a picture of 6 of us in there at a nightclub. I was trying to think of what street, 42nd Street, but I can't remember any more about it than. I got a picture of it there someplace, though.
Okay.
I can show you now or later.
Oh, we'll get it. We'll get to it a little bit
It'd
later
waste
on.
time to show it right now, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So you made it over to England,
Made it to England,
and so you went in at Liverpool,
Liverpool, England.
and then where'd you go from there?
Well, I'll back up just a little bit. When we got into Liverpool, England, that ship had been used to transport German prisoners to the United States. So we had to be deloused of lice and bed bugs. I never will forget
Oh.
that. But after that, we went to our base, which was Saffron Walden, England, and it's very close to Cambridge, if you know where Cambridge would
Okay.
be. It's a university town. I remember that about it. That was in March of 1944.
So, is this the base you worked out of the whole time you
This-
were over there?
Well, the base after D-Day, the base moved over into England, over into France, two different places, but I didn't last long enough to move over there. On my 20th mission, which was May the 27th, 1944, 10 days before D-Day, I got shot at.
Wow.
So I spent about 4 months over in France with the underground. And by the time it was liberated and I got out, all of my outfit had moved into France. See?
Okay.
So I was only in combat 6 weeks, actual flying. I got 19 and a half missions. That 20th mission I didn't get back, not in an airplane.
So what was your job on the ship?
On the plane,
plane.
I was a gunner. I was in a tunnel. That's the belly part of the plane.
Okay.
I had a fixed caliber 50 machine gun. I also had a camera that I took any activity on the ground that was related to enemy,
Okay.
convoys and so forth. I took pictures. And then there were certain gauges and different things that I had to keep an eye on for the turret. It had a turret up at the top of the plane with 2 caliber 50s.
Okay.
Any mechanical aspects that I could help with while on board, which very seldom there was nothing to do except in that respect.
Okay. So what kind of plane was this?
Yeah, A-20.
It was an A-20?
A-20.
Oh,
It's
okay.
called a Havoc.
Yeah.
It's a very good plane.
Nice
In
plane.
fact, the English used it long before we did, and they called it the Boston. Of course, ours was a better built. It was
Right.
done some modification on it as time went on.
Yeah, we interviewed Norm Tiefel. He wound up eventually in B-25s, but he went over in an
Yeah.
A-20. He said he
Yeah.
loved that
Yeah.
plane. Three-man crew?
It's a 3-man. I'll have to explain that to you. We always carry a lead bomber and a number 2 deputy and a number 3 deputy planes.
Okay.
Those 3 planes have Norton bomb sights in them.
Okay.
And when the lead plane drops the bombs, the remainder of the planes drop when they see the other bombs fall.
Okay.
So the lead planes had a glass nose which contained a combination navigator and bombardier.
Okay.
All the other planes had a plain nose with 4 caliber 50s protruding out of them.
Okay.
So they were three crew members:
All right.
the pilot, the turret gunner, and the tunnel gunner. I was
Okay.
a tunnel gunner.
So who is the toggleier on that plane?
On
Okay, you say the planes with the bomb sights would drop their bombs, and then the rest would just.
would drop when they
Drop
saw
on
the
there.
others, the 3, the lead plane drop their bombs,
Okay.
then the rest of them would drop.
Okay. Now, who actually dropped the bombs on your plane? Was that your job or?
No, the bombardier does that.
Okay.
See, in the lead plane, you've got the Norton bomb sight,
Okay.
and when you're going over the target, as you're approaching the target, that bomb sight, what I call it, the Norton bomb sight,
Yeah.
it actually takes the plane over. It's flying the plane. The pilot's sitting there, just like I'm sitting here,
Huh.
and that's when you can't take any evasive action.
Yeah.
And the reason they have 3 planes, and this happened in my case, if number 1, if he gets knocked out, number 2 moves up and takes over. If something happens to number 2, number 3 takes over.
Okay.
Number 3, if something happens to him, the mission's aborted. You go back home, regroup, and go do it again.
Okay.
And the day I got hit, all 3 planes got knocked out.
Wow.
So it was aborted, and they went back, and that evening they went back again to that target.
Who were the fellows on your crew?
On my crew, the pilot that day, I wasn't flying with my regular pilot. I was flying with the CO, which he didn't fly on a regular basis, but when he did, somebody had to fly with him, so I was assigned. His name was Leslie Huff. He was a pilot. The bombardier navigator was Benny Lever, and the turret gunner up above was Fred Strickland,
Okay.
and I was in the belly. I was the 4th one.
Where's Fred Strickland from? I've heard that name.
He's from Chester, I don't know if it's North or South Carolina.
Yeah.
He's gone now.
It must be someone
Yeah.
else I know from
Yeah.
that name.
Yeah.
The name's familiar to me.
Yeah, well,
And who's your regular pilot?
we didn't have a radio. We
No,
just,
your regular pilot.
oh, the regular, Lester Huff.
Okay, Lester.
My regular pilot, you're talking about
Yeah.
the one I flew with, assigned to, that was Richard Cotter.
Richard Cotter.
We called him Dick Cotter.
What can you tell me about these fellows? Personality or
Well,
how'd you describe
I
them
tell you
folks?
what, I think it was, I know it was in our squadron, and I think it was pretty well spread all over. When you met them on the ground, you saluted them and you called them "Good morning, sir," and "Yes" and "No, sir." But when you were, when you were on an airplane, they were just old Joe to you. You call them anything you want to. I seen a little incident one time. We were at the planes waiting. We hadn't got in our planes yet. We were getting ready to get in our planes, and the pilot, a plane over right next to me, he and one of the gunners got into it, and the gunner took off his. He had a flying cap with the goggles and everything.
Right.
He took it off and took it with the straps, and he hit this pilot across the neck. They both got in the plane and made the mission. When they got back, the pilot come up, shook his head. He said, "No, let's forget it. It's over with." And that was all there was to it.
Huh.
You couldn't have done that on the ground, you know. But when you're on a crew, everybody was the same. Yeah.
Were you scared?
On the first mission?
Oh, well, on any of them, I guess.
Well, oh yeah. I think anybody says they wasn't scared. I was scared on missions, especially when that flak started bursting close enough it would make your plane bounce around in the air. Or if you started seeing a few air holes in your fuselage, it
Well,
scared you, yeah. But it's something that you go back to base and you don't dwell on. You don't worry about it, what's going to happen the next day. I don't know why you don't, but I probably would today, but I didn't then. Because when you're young, you got the attitude, it's going to happen to somebody else, but it's not going to happen to me.
Yeah.
It's just the attitude.
Yeah, I don't know what there is about that.
I don't either. I can't explain that.
I guess maybe it's just sort of a survival
Yeah.
technique that we're kind of born with.
Yeah, we had armor plate that I could lay on if I had to, and I could still fire my machine gun if necessary. That flak got pretty close. I bet I didn't look very long on that armor plate. I would make sure every bone was on top of that armor plate.
Yeah, I would too. I
Yeah.
make good use of it.
Yes, that's.
So that just a separate plate that's
Yeah, it was
loose?
just a plate was bolted in there, and it was for your own protection.
Okay.
We had now my escape hatch and where my gun was, there was an opening about 3 foot square. And that's where my gun was. That's how you got in the ship and out of the ship. Myself and also the turret gunner.
Okay.
And they gave us a long strap, which reminds me now of the safety belt you wear in your car. This is just the straps that you hooked onto your harness, of course. That was a 3 foot opening, and I was right here working out of it with my gun and everything. If you happen to hit a air pocket or air turbine, it's very easy to fall out. But you asked me if I was scared. I wasn't always scared, but I didn't ever want to be hooked to that air belt.
Yeah.
I thought, if I go out of here, I'm going with a parachute. I ain't going to be tied in, maybe can't get it undone or something.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't use it. And a lot of them didn't. We didn't have to if we didn't want to, but it was just for safety. I never did anything happen. I never did hit it. We never did that rough air or anything.
Can you describe what you saw as you were up in the air? I mean, a lot of planes. How big a group would you go in?
It depended on the target. If it was a railroad yard, which when I got shot down, we was going to Amiens, France, northern Normandy, to hit a big railroad yard. And there was, I'm going to say probably, we had 4 squadrons, and they sent all 4 squadrons, and I'd say there's close to 100 planes.
Okay.
The day we got shot. Sometimes we just take our own squadron and go.
Okay.
Our priority targets before D-Day was launching ramps for the V-1 buzz bomb,
Okay. All right.
and we'd go down about 5,000 or 6,000 feet and hit them.
Could you see them on the ground? Could you?
You could see them, yeah.
Huh.
But the actual buzz bomb, I couldn't see real well, but you could see the launching ramp. But
Yeah.
I saw a lot of them in the air. And it's kind of interesting story on that. A lot of people don't know this, but I've seen many of them because I was over in France and I sat and watched them. They were slightly faster than our P-51, which was the fastest fighter plane we had.
Okay.
But those guys got so they could bring them down. What they'd do, they'd get up in the air about 2,000 feet above them where they could see them coming. They had to time it just right, and just as that buzz bomb come over, they'd come down on it, and in a dive they could catch it.
Okay.
They'd take their wing, the P-51 would take his wingtip and get right under that wingtip of that bomb, give it a flip, and you throw they had a gyro compass. If you throw that off a zero on there, it would go into a crash mode.
Oh, you're kidding?
Yes, sir.
Gee,
I've seen it do that.
You think they crashed the plane?
Well, you had, I was supposed to say, it took skill to do it.
Wow.
But they'd just give it a little flip, and it didn't take, that buzz bomb was, it didn't have much of a wing spread, it was all body, and they could do it.
That is, I've never, wow.
Never heard of that.
Never guessed
They
that.
most certainly did it. They were
That
good
is
at it.
something.
Yeah,
Wow, that's worth the filming right here, just to pick up on that.
yeah. And then after even before I was shot down, we got rid of most of the launching ramps, and then they had to find another way to launch them. So they'd put a tripod on the German fighter plane and mount it on there and then turn it loose. I've
Okay.
seen a lot of them.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they did that.
That's something.
Sure did.
So you've been on 19 missions,
19 missions.
came back on 19 missions. Now, did you drop bombs on all of these missions?
We did all but that 19th mission. See, we got shot down before we got to the target that day.
Okay.
I call it 19 and a half because I went over, but I didn't come back.
Yeah.
The rest of them did, but I didn't.
Wow. So the first plane was shot down.
No, they were, as I said, I was in the lead plane, number one.
You were in the lead
Number
plane.
2 and number 3 were behind me.
Okay.
And the number 2 and 3 got hit first, but they got direct hits. Now I'm in the belly of the plane and I can't see them get hit, but when they get down low enough, I have a panoramic view of them going to the ground. The number 2, they said that he evidently was killed because he was slumped over the wheel. They could see, other pilots could see him. But they both went into a spiral spin right straight into the ground, and there was no chutes.
No getting
And
out.
I could watch them all the way down after they got down where I could see them, and I know there wasn't anybody out. They hit in a pasture about a quarter of a mile apart.
Wow. Did you know these fellows? Did you know the names?
Yes, I can't call the gunners' names, but I know the pilots. The number 2 deputy was Leland Norton, and number 3 deputy was a guy by the name of Craig, G-R-E-G-G. And I can't remember the gunners. I've got them down in the book there, but I don't remember their names now.
Must be hard.
But after they got hit, that's when we got a hit. And the right engine was knocked out, and we had a fire in the bomb bay. Well, in an A-20, aft of the bomb bay, there's a little inspection window. And one thing that I don't like about an A-20, the only thing I don't like about it, I'm isolated from the pilot, the pilot's isolated from the bombardier. We're all in separate compartments. The only 2 guys, the turret's up above me, so we're in the same area and we can get together.
Right.
But the first thing I did, I told the pilot, I said, the bomb bay's on fire, the hydraulic oil was burning, the electrical wires burning. It blew this inspection window out. And when it did that, the flames was coming back on me.
Oof.
So I told him, I said, we got to get out of this plane. I said, we're on fire back here, and I explained it all to him. Well, he gave the bailout order right away. And the first thing that I did, I looked up to see if I could help my turret gunner. And he motioned me to go ahead. He was on his way out, so I was the first one out of the ship. And then the turret gunner was behind me, and I kept watching to see if the pilot and bombardier bailed out, but it's kind of a long explanation. I'll go through it if you want me to explain it.
Yes, please do.
Okay. When I bailed out, after he gave the bailout order, I was the first one to go. Now, we had never had any physical training on how to bail out or how to land, but they give us some rules to use, and one was you never touch your ripcord when you're bailing out, because if you do, and you come in contact with some part of the plane, you might pull it, and it would hang up on the plane. So the first thing I did was grab that ripcord. I said, nope, don't do that. So I took my hand, removed my hand from the ripcord, and I went out first. And that was the worst experience I ever had in my life. I went into a horizontal spin. It was like I was laying on a table,
Ooh.
flat on my back, and the table was spinning at a high rate of speed. Well, I didn't know what this was all about. I'd never heard of this before. And instead of falling, for a few seconds, I was sucked up under these planes, and all these planes, them churning propellers
Oh,
coming
gee.
at. Well, I was throwing my arms out and kicking my legs. I was doing everything. I thought, well, you're supposed to tumble, fall head over heels. Well, it seemed to last forever. It was only a few seconds. And what it was all these planes passing over me that created an air turbulence. As soon as they went over me, I started falling. And then the next thing that they tell you to do after you once start falling, get out of the plane, you always delay the opening of your chute. The quicker you get to the ground, unless you just happen to land in the middle of something, the better chance you have of hiding.
Right.
So I was free falling, and you can't tell how far you're falling. But I found out you can grab your rip cord, you can pull your shoe up, and you can probably tie your shoe up there. You've got perfect control of your body while you're falling, even though you're tumbling or.
Really?
Yeah, you do. You
Huh.
can do anything you want to. So I thought, well, I'm not going to open till the last minute. And later on, the French told me, they said, we didn't think you had a chute or it wouldn't open because they didn't think it was going to open.
Wow.
So I fell as far as I figured it was safe, and I opened my chute. Then the next thing you do, they tell you to study the layout of the ground, layout of the land, so you know exactly what you're going to do, which way you're going to head. Well, there was a highway route. I remember Route 29 went from Dieppe on through to Paris. And I thought, well, I can't go to the highway. And then I looked to my left, and there was a woods, but there was a big open field before. So I didn't have any idea what I was going to do when I hit the ground. And the worst part of it was when I hit the ground, they never taught you they never took us up on a platform, let us jump off and something hold us, like a chute. They never told us anything like that. Well, I just relaxed my legs and bent them. Well, I put mine completely in neutral because I lit right on my posterior. I took all the weight. And I always said 30 years later I could find the imprint over there. But anyway, I hit so hard that momentarily I just sat there. I just wasn't with it. And finally I kind of revived and I realized I got to get hid. And I started to get up on my feet, and there's two things happened. I found out I'd sprained my ankle or broke it. I don't think it was broke because nothing was ever done to it. But I'd sprained my ankle, and I looked up, and there stood two Frenchmen, just like they popped out of a box, And I had a little dictionary, which I still got, and I opened it up right quick, and I found, is the enemy near? And they nodded yes and pointed in all directions. Well, one of them took my parachute and the other motioned me to hide in a hedgerow. There was a hedgerow right there by me. I was in an apple orchard, practically in the backyard. So I crawled in that apple orchard, and I'd say I had 3 to 5 minutes, and Germans started arriving on motorcycles. But these Frenchmen would stand up there in the yard, and when the Germans would come by and say, "Did you see a parachutist?" "Yeah, he fell down the road," and they just kept directing them away. Well, where I was hiding, I was up on a bank, and right down over on the other side of the hedgerow, there was a road the farmers used to go back and forth to their field.
Right.
If they had went, they'd go up to this open field, and that's where the hedgerow ended. If they'd just made a left turn and come right down that hedgerow, I'd been in plain view.
Wow.
And I'll bet you they made maybe 20 trips up there on a sickle back and forth.
Huh.
Never did come in that apple orchard.
Wow.
And they looked for me, I'm guessing about 3 hours, and finally they gave up and left.
That's close.
Yes, that was close.
Yeah, it was
That
very close. And how about the other fellows in the plane? Do you have any idea what
Well,
happened to
see,
them?
on my way down, after I opened my chute, I kept looking to see them, and I could only see one chute, and it was real high, and that was my turret gunner. And I knew as quick as the Germans got to me, by the time he got to the ground, he probably was captured. And it turned out he was, although I didn't know it that day.
Yeah.
And I didn't see the chute of my pilot or my bombardier, and I figured the shape the plane was in, it was burning and only running on one engine. We were losing altitude before I jumped. I figured they bailed out, but I had no way of knowing. And later on, I kept asking the French about the pilot and the bombardier, and they didn't know. Or at least they didn't tell me. So I had to learn that all later. But the pilot, I found out, it was in '86 when I finally found out about my other gunner. They captured him. In fact, they were waiting for him when he hit the ground, so he spent 14 months in a prison camp. And then I'll go ahead and finish. After I got back to base, I was liberated and got back to base. All the planes and most of the crew were over in France. It was skeleton crew still left at my base, and they told me that the pilot and the bombardier bailed out over the channel because the reason the bombardier couldn't bail out, his hatch jammed. It's right. He was in the nose and it was right under him. It was jammed and he couldn't get it open. And with the plane burning and losing altitude, that pilot kept it up until he could take his foot and kick it loose. And by that time, they was out over the English Channel. So they bailed out in the English Channel, and the pilot hit the tail, and he was seriously injured up in his shoulder area. And the bombardier, but he made it down in his parachute and survived. The bombardier, another rule that they tell you when you're going down in water, you have a quick release on your chute.
Okay.
And just before you hit the water, you're supposed to release yourself and let the chute drift on away from you. He forgot to do that, and when he went in the water and surfaced, he was up under the chute and tangled up the shroud lines. And he told me had he not had a knife to cut them lines loose, he'd have drowned him.
Wow.
So
A lot of the paratroops going in on D-Day landed in the channel
yeah.
with all that gear they had on.
Yeah, right. They didn't have a chance.
Man.
Yeah.
Wow. So you were in the apple orchard.
Yeah, I was in the apple orchard, and they looked for me for about 3 hours, and they kind of tapered off, and I could see this man that had come out to me, one of them, standing up in the yard. He was actually the owner of that farm. He finally came out. He made several attempts, and he'd go back. I guess something came up that they didn't think it was safe, but he finally came out to me, and he wanted identification. Well, when you don't speak French and they don't speak English, you don't know what's going on, hardly. Well, I finally showed him my dog tags and everything, and he finally seemed to be satisfied, and he took his watch and pointed to 5 or 6 o'clock, I think it was 5, and he pointed in the direction of south, and he turned up and turned around and walked away. Well, I was baffled then because I didn't know what he meant. And the first place I thought, well, is he trying to tell me to get up and walk? I can't walk. That ankle was in bad shape after 3 hours. It really was. And on an airplane, when you get hit, if there's any chance you can maintain flight, you jettison everything out of the airplane. I even took my watch off and threw it out right away. So I didn't have a watch to know what time it was, and I knew I couldn't walk. So I just laid there. I thought, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, 5 o'clock, here they come with 2 men, and they had a horse and a wagon right over the hedgerow where I told you that road was, full of straw. They got me down there and covered me up in that straw, and it was May, and it was hot then. I'd punch an air hole, and they'd punch it back. I thought I was going to die from no air. They took me about a mile to another apple orchard, and there was a big wood pile. They'd pull that wood apart, and there was a board, pull up a board, and they put me down in the trench. Well, by that time, I knew that, well, they're going to help me, and probably dark, they'll take me in. And it don't get dark in France in the summertime till 10:30 or 11 o'clock. So I was in there for a while, and directly I heard somebody moving that wood, and it was a young girl, and she brought me a bucket of water to soak that ankle in, and I can still feel that good warm water on that ankle. But she left, and just about, I don't know, it wasn't too late in the evening. It wasn't near as late as I thought it should be, but 2 more men came back. One was the farmer where I came down. The other man, he was not the man that came out, so I don't know where he come from. I know later, but they came there and they told me to get out of the trench, helped me out of the trench, and I could see across the highway, this Route 26. There was an old house over there. There was a lady standing over there, and she kept watching until the way was clear, and then she motioned for them to bring me in, and they helped me across through the apple orchard and across the road and in the house. And she had me sit down at the table, and she went in, and the first thing she done, she brought me a glass of hot milk, and I don't like milk, but I drank it. Well, then I proceeded. I wanted to know exactly where I was in France, because when you get hit and there's confusion, you don't know, you have a chance to talk to the navigator, don't know where you're at.
But you were in the Normandy area somewhere.
I was right in the Normandy area, yeah. So she didn't understand me and I didn't understand her. And finally, I was sitting at the table and I took my hand and I drew the outline of France the best I could. And she understood and she went over to her drawer and came back and unfolded a map and pointed to a little town of Mortimer, which was just a little village and it was real close to a bigger city called Neuchâtel. Well, by that time, I woke up and I thought, well, my lands, I got an escape kit here full of maps.
Yeah.
And these maps that I had were made out of silk and they were absolutely beautiful. And I took those maps out and showed them to her and she, I don't know why, but she was really inspired about those maps. And in a little while I said, souvenir. And she understood and she took those maps and then she said, she helped me up the stairs in the attic. And I was in that attic for...
This is 020045, tape 3, isn't it? Okay, tape 3. And
Now she helped me up the stairs to this attic. Had a bed up there. Had windows up there, but they were boarded up, but I could see out through the cracks during the daylight. But that first night, at that time, that was just 10 days before D-Day, and this was a busy road, highway. It was Route 29 or 28 or 29, I forget. It was real busy. There was tanks, trucks, troops, every minute out of the hour going by. And when those tanks flew by, I slept in a bed that had rollers on it. I tried to sleep. I didn't sleep that night, but I was in bed. It had rollers. When those tanks go by, that bed would go bounce the wall, and I just went around that wall all night long. And the next morning, she came up and she had me a pair of sandals, a pair of pants, and a shirt. She said, "You got to get." Of course, I couldn't understand her then. I didn't know any French at all, but she made me know that I had to get them clothes off. So I was up there for 2 weeks, and the only time she come up there was to bring me food, or I had an old-fashioned slop jar. She took care of all that for me. And the most exciting thing that happened while I was there, I would hear Germans down there in the house. I thought, what in the world is going to happen to me now? Well, the Germans had a habit of stopping to get something to eat or something to drink. And I learned this later, but she told me later on, I asked her, I said, why in the world were there Germans in there? She said, well, when they come and wanted something to eat or drink, I put them right in the kitchen at the table, and they had no reason to tell me or think that I was hiding anybody or doing anything against the Germans. And not only that, while they were eating, I was telling them how much I hated Americans. And I found out later on that they actually came twice there looking for me. And that was her way to outwit them. And I don't know what she told them when they wanted to search the house, but they never did come upstairs, so she must have done something right. So I was there 2 weeks, and by that time, I knew a few words, and I could understand because they would talk to me just like they would a kid, you know.
right.
And she told me, she said, it's not safe for you to be here any longer. And she said, I made arrangements to take you out in the country to another farm. So that was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and went down. She helped me. I still had to use a cane or a stick to walk with, but I got down the steps, and she had our horse-drawn cart waiting there. You've seen the old German or French carts, haven't you? And she and another woman took their place in the seat, and they had a chair in the back for me. And we started down the road. Well, the first thing we know, we were stopped with 2 Germans, soldiers. And I have no idea what they said to her, but they spoke a little, she either spoke some German or they spoke a little French, and she just talked to them a minute and we were on our way. She turned off this main road and took me back about a mile off the main road to another farm. There was a man at the time, a man and his wife, and a baby 4 months old, and then another girl that was probably 13 or 14 at that time. And I was with that family for 1 month, and the first few days I was there, I didn't think they were very friendly, but I was kind of a bashful person. I wasn't very forward about speaking or anything, and they were the same way, I found. Once we got acquainted, I was one of the family. I stayed in that, like I say, I was there a month, and while I was there, now they didn't even want a neighbor to see you. If a neighbor come, you wanted to see them first, and I had to hide someplace. But I did have a lot of opportunity to sit outside, and I had a panoramic view of the fighters and bombers going back and forth, and I enjoyed watching that, seeing a lot of them come down, a lot of them blow up in the sky. But everything, the first thing, I was there, I'd say about a week or 10 days, there was a guy came, and he was chief of resistance from the little town of Neuchâtel. And he came to take a picture of me and to make a false ID card. And it was a paper that you put in your pocket, but since it was deteriorating, I preserved it on the board.
Cut it forward.
But that's my
Here, hold it. Here.
that's my false ID card that he provided for me.
Wow.
My name was Joseph Antone Lemire. I was deaf and dumb. Okay. So anyway, he provided me. Took a picture, and later on he provided me with that card. The next thing that happened while I was there, there was a. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. The man had gone to the village to Mortimer one day, and he come back and he was very excited. And like I say, by that time I knew a few words, and if they wanted me to hear, I could understand a lot. But he was talking so rapidly that I couldn't understand. But he had mentioned the word collaborator several times. Well, that told me something. And finally, he came over where I was sitting and sat down, and he said he'd been to this town, that he had heard that the word was out that a parachutist was hiding in the area. And he said, you've got to move and move quickly. And he said, I've already made arrangements for somebody to come get you, and they'll take you somewhere. Well, the very next day, a young man came. He was 18 years of age, my age, or I was a little older than that. But he was going from farm to farm, hiding the same as I was, even though he was a Frenchman. But he was doing this because if the Germans caught him, he had to go to Germany for slave labor. So he was on a run like I was. But the funny thing had happened. He spoke a little bit of English. He had studied English in school. When he first started talking to me, he wanted to speak English, and I couldn't understand him because of his accent. I just couldn't make out what he was saying. And finally he said to me, and I heard every word of this, he said, I spoke to other Americans to understand, why not you? But he went ahead and explained to me that he was running from the Germans the same as I was, and he said that he couldn't even get a bread ration because if he did, then they'd have a record of his name. So he said, I'll be back the next morning and get you and take you to my parents. So the next day I bid this family farewell.
You remember their names?
Yeah, what was
Their name was Coyer, Corroyer. Coyer is the way they pronounced it.
What about
His
the
name
first
was Marcel, and I don't remember the lady's first name nor either one of the children, because the baby was only 4 months old, and I would rock her to sleep a lot of times to have something to do. And but the lady, I can't remember her first name anymore.
What about the first lady's name?
Her name was Madame Lulu,
Madam-
Leleu. I just knew her by Madame Lulu. I never did see her husband, because when she took me upstairs, her husband was out doing something on the farm, and I never left that room, and I never did meet him. And when I went back later on to visit these people after the war, she and her husband had passed away, and I never did get to see them.
were they killed in the war, or?
Oh no,
just,
no, they survived the war. But when I went back in '74 to make my first visit, and some of them told me that they had moved to a different area and they couldn't locate them. And later on, I heard that they had died. So I don't really know, but I didn't get to see them. I do know that much. The only ones over there I didn't get to see later. But getting back to my story, the next day, this Maurice, his name was Maurice Quillien, Quillien. They pronounce it Quillier. His name was Maurice. He came and got me, and I bid this family farewell, and we walked over to the road where he'd left a bicycle. And we crawled on this bicycle riding double, headed out for his home in Neuchâtel. Well, about just before you get into town, there were German guards. All the roads leading into and out of the villages, they had guards. And normally you had to state where you were going and what your business was. So just before we got to where these guards were, we dismounted from the bicycle, and he reached over and he let the air out of one of the tires on the bicycle. And like I say, he could speak a little English. I said, why? He said, because I didn't understand everything then, but I did later. But what it amounted to, he later told me, he said that the Germans delighted in seeing the French people push bicycles because they had no cars. Their cars were all taken away. And if they didn't have a horse, they either walked or they rode a bicycle. So he said the Germans actually delighted in seeing somebody push a bicycle. So he thought, well, if he lets the air out, he think we just had a flat tire, we're just two Frenchmen. So when we went by, before we got there, he said, now if they challenge us, he said, you just keep walking and I'll do the talking. They paid no attention to us. We walked right by.
Wow.
And we arrived at his house, and I met his mother, Leona. His father was Jean, Jean. And his younger brother was Michel in French. Well, and the same day they had taken an English bombardier. He was a bombardier on, I believe, a Lancaster bomber.
Okay.
And we were just sitting at the table getting acquainted. Well, the funniest thing that happened, the bombardier, this English bombardier, was telling about his parachute landing. He had landed on top of an old chicken house, collapsed through the roof, and found himself with a bunch of squalling chickens. But what was funny, he was telling this in pantomime because he couldn't speak French. That was the funniest thing that happened. Well, the very next day we were back.
Do you remember the British officer's name? Or?
His Alan Nicol.
Alan Nicol.
Alan Nicol. The next day we were sitting at the table again, ready to eat something. And by the way, they got plenty of bread, but most of the food came out of a garden. If you didn't have a garden or knew a farmer someplace, you didn't have a whole lot to eat. But this time of the year, they had a nice garden. But we were sitting at the dinner table. And all at once, the man and his wife, they jumped up and they started running out the door. And Maurice, the boy who had just brought me there, he crawled up in the kitchen sink and jumped out the window. And here, Alan and I sit there, astonished about what was going on. We didn't know what was going on. All at once we heard the B-17 bombers. Well, that told us something. And we run out and joined them in a backyard trench. And these bombers bombed the railroad station there.
Okay.
And they were far enough away that they didn't do any damage where we were. But that was my experience there. So it was decided, that was on the 4th of July, 1944, when they come over. But there were two Allied targets in that town. There was a bridge and also this railroad. So we figured there'd be more bombing. And the chief of resistance told them, said it'd be best if they'd leave and get out of the town. So we took off on the next day after the 4th and went 3 miles out into the country. And if you want me to, I'll just continue because we're getting pretty close.
You go right on.
We went out into the country, and when I got there were 3 families living together, and there happened to be 5 other guys that's temporarily there. They hadn't got them all placed yet. It was pretty far out in the country. So when we arrived out there, I saw this boy standing there who was about my age, and I walked over and I started speaking to him in French, and he started speaking to me in French. I thought, boy, his French is not very good. And about that time, he realized the same about me. We're both Americans. He was from up in New Jersey.
Well, what was his name?
His name is Henry Hodgelick.
Hodgelick. Never heard that name.
So this was a very exciting time there. Now there were 3 American boys there, and 1 from Scotland and 2 from England. It's a total of 6, I'll call them GIs,
right,
and 3 families living there. The second day we were there, somebody looked out the window and there came 3 enlisted German men, just German men, 3 soldiers. And they come up the farmer went out to see what they wanted, and they said, our superior needs horses, and he wants your horses. And this farmer had a beautiful team of big Belgians.
Yeah.
And the farmer said, no way, you can't have my horses. Well, those fellows just simply turned around and left. And the incident was forgotten. Didn't think much about it. The very next day, those men came back and they said there was 5 soldiers and three officers. The first thing they did, they come up and they set a tripod up with a gun on it in the yard. And they asked everyone to come out and show their identity card. It so happened I was the only one that was in the back end of the house and knew I hadn't been seen. I went out back and there was a way I could get up to the attic, and I went up in the attic, was up in that attic. Well, this boy I just told you about from New Jersey, he could speak pretty good French, but it wasn't real great. Well, when they were showing their ID cards to these German officers, this guy from New Jersey had left his card in the house. He didn't have it. So he had to use broken French and explain to the Germans that his card was in the house. Well, the lady of the house, she said, well, he's left his card in the house, I'll go get it for him. And the Germans did. Well, everything went off right, good, and they left with the horses. I cannot figure out to this day why those Germans seeing 5 fellas 21 years old, why they wouldn't have questioned that. But they were tuned in on getting the horses. And I was the only one that was upstairs hiding and wasn't in that.
Wow.
Do you remember some of the other soldiers' names?
The guy from Scotland was Edward, they call it Edouard. Edward, I've got this all down, but at times getting away from me, I can't remember good. And of course, the boy from New Jersey was Henry Hodgelick. Gardner, Edward Gardner was from Scotland. Glenn Bishop was from England. The other boys from Australia, and Wilkinson was his last name. And then there was a Gene Young.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's almost like God made them blind.
Yeah. So anyhow, a quick decision was made that we all had to be dispersed and get out of there. So the lady, Mrs. Killia, and her younger son, Michelle, and her husband, we left the next day, and we went a mile back towards Neuchatel and found a little vacant house that was being used as a wash house, and we moved in there. The people who owned that was Madame Poto, I remember that. And I stayed there for 2 more months, and then I was liberated.
Wow. Did you have any idea that our troops were on the continent at that time?
Yes. In fact, I almost knew when D-Day happened, because before D-Day, there was still a lot of activity of our planes, B-25s and 26s and A-20s, 2-engine planes. They would go to a mission, you'd see them go back. But I tell you, they were flying like flies after molasses over there around D-Day. And I knew something. Of course, I knew before I went down that D-Day was around the corner. They hadn't told us, but you could tell by the way activity was, the way things were. Everything kind of changes and everything's rushed, and you don't get any passes anymore, and you're on alert. And we knew it was coming off, but we had never been told. But I pretty well knew. And then after they got inland a little bit, you could hear artillery. Yeah.
So
But,
how were you liberated?
A Canadian outfit liberated Neuchatel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Remember the unit?
I've got it written down, but I'd have to look it up.
So what was the situation? You were in this house. They came and they liberated Neuchatel. Did the French take you to the Canadians, or did the Canadians find you? Or
No, what happened, I was still out in this house that belonged to people in Poto with the Killia family. The town was liberated September the 1st, pretty early morning. And as I recall, most of the Germans had evacuated because they knew they were coming, and they evacuated the town. But I think there were 3 Canadians killed, but it didn't amount to much. And after it was liberated, They brought in a bunch of English people, and they were to stay in Neuchâtel and try to get a city government going again, you know. And I was kind of lucky because I didn't have to do any more missions, because some guys did, and I'll try to explain why. They set up a city government, and any evadee was supposed to report a certain place in town there. And so I reported as an evadee, and they said, well, we're going to give you a route. You're going to hitchhike, but we're going to give you a route with a secret pass telling you where to go to London for interrogation. Now, the reason I say I was lucky, a lot of guys, this Henry Hodgelick from New Jersey was farther out in the country at that time, and he didn't get the word to report anywhere, and he went right back to his base, and he had to fly a few missions because they hadn't got the word that all evadees were not allowed to fly anymore. And the reason you're not allowed to fly anymore, if you'd get shot down the second time and maybe get captured, you might reveal some information about the people.
Right.
So
Right.
that's why I reported, and when I went to London, well, I'll tell you more about, when I left Neuchâtel, I bid to kill your family, and I had a chance to go and visit all my helpers before I left, bid them goodbye. Then Alan Nickel and myself, we left Neuchâtel riding on trucks or anything that was going our direction. When they turned off, we'd get off and wait for another one. We got pretty close to Dieppe, and he and I separated because I stopped at, where we got out at the last place, there was a English depot, and they put me in a complete English outfit. And he went somewhere different, I don't know why, but we separated, and I never did get to see that boy anymore. But that same day after I got an English outfit, I caught a flight across to London. And I was in London about 3 days, and they would interrogate me a little bit each day. And finally, they said, you go back to your outfit. So I went back to the 409th outfit, and when I got back, there was a skeleton crew, but most of them were already over into France. And they said, well, all your records are been sent to Kansas City. That's a storing place for anybody MIA. And they said, we understand you're not allowed to fly anymore. So I went back to they said, you go back to London and report to the people that interrogated. I went back there, and when I came back, I said, hey, all my outfit's gone. My records are in Kansas City. What am I supposed to do? He said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I'd like to go home. They said, that's where you're going.
Wow.
So I was lucky. I went to Scotland and got on board a C-54 aircraft and flew back to Washington, D.C.
Did you really?
Yeah. From Washington, D.C., I caught a train to Dayton, Ohio, and I had a layover, and that's where one of my sisters lived at that time. I stopped for a few hours and saw her, and then I caught a train later on in the day and went to Louisville, Kentucky. From Louisville, and I'd already sent my wife a telegram to meet me in Hawesville. That's across from the town where she lived. At midnight, that's the time the train got in. So I eventually landed there, or got into Hawesville, Kentucky at midnight, met my wife.
Was she ready to have you back?
Well, I believe she was. But basically that's my story.
Oh, wow.
And there's a little more. We both said that someday we were going back and see all of our helpers. And of course, at that time, I wasn't financially able to make that kind of a trip because I was paying for a home, you know, how young people are. But by 1974, we were with 1 house at a time. And I gave it some thought. I wanted to go back, but I thought, well, I can't speak the language. My wife won't speak the language. And I just can't say what I want to say. So anyway, I wrote a letter to this Henry Hodgelick, and he'd gone back in 1973. He said, forget about the language. He said, you get by. I said, don't worry about it. He said, go. So we went, my wife and I. And it was one of the highlight of our trips in two different ways, because we thought it would be the only trip we'd go to Europe. We thought, well, we're just going to make a trip and see some of Europe. So we flew to Frankfurt, Germany. rented a car for 21 days, and we had no itinerary where we wanted to go. We just followed our nose, but we weren't interested in seeing cities. My wife and I both, we wanted to live in homes and see and learn how their customs. And all you had to do is drive down the road, and when you got ready to stop watching, there'd be a sign out, you know, for people just like us. So we only stayed in 2 motels in 21 days. The rest of the time we stayed in homes, and we just had a wonderful time. We went to Heidelberg, Germany. Our first experience, I want to tell you about that. We were tired, of course, and by the time we waited all day for a car to come in and be washed and serviced and ready for us to go, it was pretty late in the afternoon. So the first place we come, where it was a private home, we stopped. And this guy that owned the place spoke fluent English. So he sat down and he fed us something, and he's poured us out a drink. Well, I'm not an alcoholic, I don't drink, and my wife don't drink. And what he gave us, I don't know, but if there's such thing as moonshine over there, it must have been. We took a sip and we couldn't tolerate it. So we politely told him that we didn't drink alcohol drinks. Well, brother, he was really sarcastic and fed up with us. Oh, he didn't like it a bit. And we went ahead and ate, and next morning he was still upset about it. We couldn't even cut the bread right to suit him. And I know he was glad to see us leave, but it was kind of mutual. And after that, the rest of our trip, we never had a bit of problem anywhere. We went to Heidelberg, Germany the next morning and took a ride up the river on a riverboat. Saw a lot of castles along the way and a lot of sights. And we went on into Switzerland, had a nice experience there. We went down into a valley. The mountains come right down almost to the valley. The valley was very narrow across there. But what we really stopped for, we saw a cow with a cowbell. I'm not kidding you, the cowbell, the base was about that wide. The cow had a strap going over its shoulders, down in the back of its front legs, and then through its front legs, anchored to that bell, and that was so when the cow raised over to graze, the bell would stay back out of the way.
Yeah.
Well, we took a picture of that, and by that time, my wife had noticed this little house right across the street, and a little garden, not a yard, but a garden, and a flower bed. Beautiful little place. Well, we saw this lady come out of the house. She was a little tiny thing, and she came out, and of course, we couldn't speak to each other, but sometimes action speaks louder than words, and my wife's good at making somebody understand something. So the first thing you know, this little lady, she went back in the house and she come out with a sack of green apples. And you could have knocked a bull down with them, but we took them. Well, finally she went back and she come back with a great big chocolate bar. By that time, she had figured out we were Americans, and then I think she went in the house the third time and came back with a letter, and she had a sister up in Michigan.
Ah.
So, we tried to tell her that we would notify her sister, we'd write her a letter, she'd give us the address and everything. So we did, we wrote to this lady and she wrote us a nice letter, and we sent this couple over there a Christmas card every Christmas till we failed to get one. We know they passed away. And one other funny thing was there, I was trying to ask this man over there that I'm talking about how deep the snow got there, and he didn't understand, and finally he said, "Oh, snay," and he put it up to his chin.
Wow, that's
But,
deep.
Yeah, from there we went as far east as Innsbruck, Austria, and that, they'd had the Olympics over there, so we took a walking tour, and that's where I got a parking ticket. I parked on a blue line, which you wasn't supposed to do. And we just kind of took a walking tour of that city and enjoyed that. And then when we come back to our car and saw this parking ticket, we didn't know whether it was an advertisement for a grocery store or what it was, but it was a parking ticket. So we thought, well, we better take care of this. So we was going up the street and we run into an American couple. We told him about the parking ticket, and he said, "Well, where are you going from here?" And I said, "Well, we're going to head back and go back into Switzerland and on up into Belgium and up that way." And he said, "Just tear it up." My wife and I talked to her, and I said, "No, let's don't do that. We've got a rented car here and no telling what we'll get into." So we found a police station, and my wife went in, and he spoke pretty good English. she explained to him that we didn't realize we'd illegally parked, and he said, and we were visitors, and he said, oh, forget that, but he said, don't park on a blue line at a certain time. I don't know what it was. So we left, and we went back into Switzerland, and we stopped before we got to this the town, what I call it, where the Olympics was held.
Oh, Innsbruck.
Innsbruck. Well, we got there, we were stopped by a bunch of cows. That was a beautiful drive going to Innsbruck. It was a narrow road with nice blacktop and full of real sharp hairpin curves. We had to go over Oberalp Pass. And when we got up on top of that pass, here goes the cows across the road, just taking their leisurely time. So we stopped, and there was a hotel and some buildings there. My wife said, I want to get a cowbell to take home. She wanted a cowbell. So we saw a guy, and he happened to speak English there. And she said, do you have any idea where I can find a cowbell? And he said, you come go with me. And he went across the street and opened the door, and it was full of cowbells. So she still got her cowbell. But anyhow, we left there and went back into Belfort. That's where we stayed in a motel that night. It was a beautiful city and a beautiful motel. We stayed there that night, and when we got ready to leave the next morning, we couldn't find our route number. So we saw a policeman standing there, so we asked him. She's always the one that was helping me out. She asked him how to find his certain road number, and he said, à tout droit, that means straight ahead. Well, we took off, and it seemed easy, but 3 times we went around a one-way street and come back, and there he stood. And the 3rd time we come by, he looked at our bright red car and just pointed straight ahead. And that's when we found our route number, and we went on up into Belgium, up into Holland. Holland was a different country to see. We went to Germany first, though. We went to Germany first after we come back into, after we left Switzerland, and we saw the Black Forest, and I bought that clock right up there on the wall, what they call a rocking clock.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I saw that. That's pretty neat.
That's a rocking clock, But we ended up in the Netherlands and got to see the windmills, and the people. Some of the people still wear the Dutch wooden shoes. We got as far as, I can't remember for sure what the town was now. I can't remember that offhand, but it was up in the northern part of the Netherlands. And by that time, our time on the car was about to run out. So we headed towards France. We got to France, and I wish my wife was in here, she'd remember where we stopped. We stopped right there on the coast at a French town, and my wife's wedding band had broke, so she said, well, this is a good place to buy a souvenir, so she bought her new wedding ring there. Then from there, we headed to France. We were 1 day early, and on the way to Neuchâtel, we passed 2 of the places where I had stayed, the Adam Farm, where the Germans came after the horses, and the Poteau Farm, where I spent the last 2 months. And we got into Neuchâtel, and they had sent us pictures, and we'd written letters all this time, you know. Am I getting ahead of?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. When we stopped and parked in front of their house, we could see them in the kitchen, and they were having lunch, and they looked up and saw me, and of course they both got excited, and they come running out. And if the French have a yard, they have a gate, and they keep it padlocked. Well, she got all excited, and she couldn't get the lock to work, and we got excited and didn't get a picture, but she's saying, moi pour petit Gus, my little Gus. But finally, she got the gate open, and she gave us her big hug and kiss, and then they tried to take us every place we wanted to go, and like I say, the first place that I stayed, the Madame Lulu, they'd either moved or had passed away, and we didn't get to see them. But I went out to where I landed, the first place where I landed, and got a picture of where you dropped my parachute.
Was the hole still there?
No, I didn't see the hole. What was odd about it, the apple orchard, when I came down, I just barely missed an apple tree, and there was an apple orchard. The apple orchard was gone, but that one tree was still there. But we had a great time, and We went back in '78 to see them. Only that time we spent all the time with the French people, mainly this one family, the Killian family, because I stayed with them 2 months, and she had helped 11 other airmen. She got all kinds of awards and medals and certificates from the Allied governments, England, Canada, and the United States. And she had no fear of the Germans whatsoever. And the general rule of thumb over there, if the Germans caught you harboring an Allied flyer, most of the time they would shoot you, or at least shoot the man and send the woman to a prison camp. So that didn't worry her. It just didn't worry her. She wasn't afraid of anything. So we had a real nice visit there. So we came back home, and they made us promise that we'd come back. Well, when we came back, my wife said, I'm not going back to France without speaking French. So she went out here to the Anderson, which was Anderson College then. And she was in her 60s then. And the French professor out there was Marion Bales from over at Muncie. And Lavere asked her if there was any chance that she could sit in on a French class. And she said, well, why do you want to learn French? And Lavere said, well, my husband was shot down over France. And she said, we're going back. And she said, I want to be able to tell those people in their own language my appreciation. Well, of course, his teacher said, you can come out here as long as you like. So she went out off and on pretty regular for 3 years. She got to where she could do a real good job at writing French. And she could speak it pretty good, but there wasn't, after she quit out there, there wasn't too many people to speak French with. But she got by, she did all of her letters, wrote all of her letters, read all of her letters that we got from over there. So when we went back the last time, 1981, it was her 60th wedding anniversary. And she was able to talk with them, and I found out a lot of things that I didn't know. I found out that for every soldier, every airman that was turned into the French, the Germans gave them 10,000 francs, which amounted to about $2,000 back then.
Wow.
So any of these people that had me, I got to thinking, well, if they wanted to, they could turn me in, got $2,000.
Yeah.
And after all, some of these people, they had to buy, if they wanted to eat, they had to buy food through the black market. But none of them would, well, they were on farms and wouldn't have to. This Killian lady did live in a town, but she didn't believe in black market. But that was when we really had a nice time. We went back for this 65th or 60th wedding anniversary, and the first thing they do, they have what they call a civil service. And what they do, they gather in a government building, and the mayor, he tells the good times, some of the good times, and some of the bad times as his family went through. And of course, he told a lot about her helping the airmen. Then they go to the church and repeat their marriage vows, and then they go to a restaurant. So it's almost an all-day affair. It's quite an experience to experience, to go through, But we come back after that to the States, and in '89, Madame Killian died, and her husband, I believe, died in 1987. The last one of my helpers, and I'm talking about the elders, the last one died in '92. So we still keep intact with the 2 boys of the Killian family, which is Maurice and Michelle. The little girl that was 4 months old, I write to her every Christmas. She writes to me. She's a nun, Catholic nun.
Is this the one you were rocking?
That's the one I was rocking. The family where I landed there on their farm, they just helped me that first day. I didn't stay with them. But they had a 4-year-old girl, and they made her a dress out of my parachute. Her mother and dad are dead now, and she writes to me every Christmas, and she writes a nice long letter. She can write English. But that's just about it.
Wow.
we still, we've had boxes and boxes of letters that we had have translated, and if they had so many, we threw a lot of them away, but I've still got scrapbooks full of pictures and letters and slides and all that, but
That's an amazing story.
that's about the end of the story.
Yeah. I was curious when you were rocking the baby.
Mm-hmm.
Were you thinking about your own son who?
Yes,
you
I
never
did.
met?
Yeah, I sure did. The reason I rocked her, all Frenchmen are not real clean, but all the families that I was with were exceptionally clean. And this lady polished her old cook stove once every week, and she mopped the floor. And I'd usually, while she was doing her work, I'd rock this baby to sleep. There's one thing that happened that you might be interested in. A lot of people say, well, do you have any close calls? Well, I really did have. To start with, I was living out there on the Poto farm, which was 1, 2, 3, 4. It was the fourth place with Madame Killia, this family. We all lived together in this little vacant house. These V1 bombs, they were at that time they were launching them off a tripod off of a plane that I told you about, and they would release them just pretty close to where we lived in this little house. And every once in a while, they'd have a malfunction, and they'd either fly in circles, or sometimes they'd make 180 and go right back to Germany.
Ooh.
But one day, I only had one suit, one pair of clothes. I had a shirt and a pair of pants, and I made my underwriters wash. So the lady did. But when they washed my clothes, I had to go to bed to wait for them to dry, because I had nothing else to wear. I was much bigger than a Frenchman, most Frenchmen, and clothes were not plentiful. They had nowhere to get them except make them. But I was in bed waiting for my clothes to dry, and here come one of these buzz bombs, and it started making a circle around our house. And it was low, way lower than it should have been, and each circle it made, it got lower, and the circle seemed to get tighter. And they thought it was going to be a bullseye. They thought it was going to come right down on us. Well, we started running. I got out of bed, was all dead. The man was gone that day, and of course Maurice was always gone. It was just the lady and Michelle.
Okay, this is 020045, tape 4, and we've got this buzz bomb circling.
Yeah, okay, we were running, trying to get to the outer perimeter to get away from it. But each time we would run, that thing would confront us. And well, we'd turn and go back. Finally, it crashed about a half a mile over here, and we were standing there thinking how lucky we were that we didn't, land close enough to do some damage.
Yeah.
And all at once, this lady, Mrs. Killian, and her sons looked at me and they started laughing. I was out there in undershorts and undershirt. That's all I had on. That was it. I didn't even realize what was going on.
Even then, you were properly dressed for a bombing.
And now, if you get tired of this, you stop me, because
No.
I
We could go on.
keep thinking of things.
We could go on.
I'm talking now about some of the close calls, and I've told you a couple now. But
Now, did it explode when it hit?
oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it has a charge in the nose of it. When
Okay,
it
so
hit, when it impacts it.
So it
goes
impacts
off.
it, it
Yeah,
explodes.
it goes off.
I wasn't quite sure how that worked.
Yeah, that's how it works. This little house where this incident that I told you about happened, there were Route 29, we're still on Route 29, and there's several other roads that verge into it. It's a big intersection, and it's always busy because there's trucks and tanks and everything was parked there. So it was real busy. So I had a special place out in the garden. It was a camouflage trench just for me. Because anybody that you're staying with, if you see somebody coming, there's a chance you're going to get caught. You try to get out of the house, and if they catch you, then you say, well, I just got here, you try to protect the people. That's the idea if you can. So I had a camouflage trench that I went to. Well, at that time, the Germans were using a lot of horses and wagons to haul their equipment and their whatever they needed. They were mostly going to the channel with it, see, because they were still fighting around the D-Day there. So they would come in the apple orchard. They'd travel all night and come in the apple orchard in the morning, camouflage their wagons, and tie their horses out so they could graze. Then when evening come, they would take off and travel. That way the fighters couldn't attack them, see, because they couldn't see them. Well, this one particular night, or evening, when we thought they were going to leave, they started bedding down. They were going to stay all night. Well, it was good and dark. There was a plane come over and dropped flares, and the place lit up just like daylight. Well, then after they dropped the flares, in just a matter of seconds, there was a flight of P-38s come over, and they was machine gunning this convoy that was down there. Somebody had radioed this in, see. Well, anyway.
Somebody had radioed, you think maybe French resistance?
Yeah, the French resistance had radioed about this convoy being there.
Okay.
That's how they did that. Well, anyway, that some of the bullets started ricocheting off the house. Well, Madame Killier, I call him, this always in French, it's Madame, Mrs. Killier, and her son, they had a big fireplace in that little building. They had room to get in the hearth and kind of up in the fireplace, but there wasn't room for 3 of us in there. So I thought, well, I'll go to my trench. So I started out the back door, and like I say, it was night, but it was lit up like daylight. So I went to, and they always have 3 to 6 trenches at every farmhouse, and in town they may have that many. I'll explain that a little later why. But anyhow, I started running to my trench, and I thought, well, I'm going to hit the first one I know. And when I did, there was already 2 German soldiers in there.
Oops.
Well, I didn't bother them. I don't really know what I did. I ran someplace and hide down there and get in the trench. But after it was over, it didn't last too long. The Germans came to the house and they wanted bandages and so forth, but some of them had been wounded. I didn't know of any that was killed, but some of them had been wounded. So that was kind of a close call. And before that happened, I would always sit at the house at the table, and I had a door and a window with a panoramic view. If anybody came into this property, they had to come through a gate. There was a gate. I could see them. And before they would get there, I would go to the garden and go in this trench. Well, one day I was sitting there, and I went to sleep. And first thing you know, I heard a knock on the door. And I looked up, and it was a German soldier. There he was with his helmet, his gun on his back. Well, Madame Killier was in a little attached garage washing clothes, and she heard him, and she came and gave him a drink of water. And he turned and left. Of course, see, if he would have been smart enough and asked for my ID, it showed that I was deaf and dumb, and yet when he knocked, I looked up.
Yeah.
So that was another close call, kind of a close call that I had. But I think that was most of them.
I'd say it was all pretty close call.
Yeah, they were,
Really
really.
kind of nerve-wracking for a while.
But I think that's, I can think of one more thing that you might be interested in. When they were getting ready to liberate, the people around the area knew, because these resistors, they go out and they contact these guys. These guys are coming ahead of time to tell them what to expect a lot of times. So the Germans, they set up, Neuchâtel is in a valley, and it's surrounded by a ridge all the way around. When you leave Neuchâtel, you have to go up on top of the ridge to get out. The Germans and aircraft guns, they were going to fire on the Canadians when they come in, see. Well, some of the French, I think they said there was 5 guys, they destroyed this gun, and one of these guns was about a half a mile from that little house where we were, and what they did, they put a charge in the barrel and detonated it, and it blows the barrel up. And I know I was standing in the door when that happened, the concussion, I thought it busted my eardrum, but it didn't. But anyway, there was 5 guys that blew 2 guns up, one near us and one on another ridge over there someplace. Well, one guy, in the process of blowing it up, one of the Frenchmen, he was injured, and they took him to a house to get medical aid. And while he was at that house, somehow or another, the Germans found out who did this, and they tracked him over to this house. And when they got over there, there were 3 families living in that house, 3 family, and there was 15 Englishmen there. Wow. And they lined them up and shot every one of them. And that's about it.
Not being in uniform, they could have got you as being spies.
Oh yeah. I've heard various stories where they say, even though you were out of uniform, if you had your dog tags, that should save you, but I don't believe it would. I don't believe it would.
Did you wear your dog tags?
Yeah, I kept my. No, I didn't. I gave them to that French lady. I gave them to her souvenir. I gave them away. I did. We had the option of carrying it. We were issued a .45 caliber pistol, and we had an option to carry that on mission. Excuse me. I would never carry mine because, oh wait a minute. If I parachute out sometime, and I'm carrying a gun, they have a right to shoot me if I'm carrying a gun.
Yeah.
If I'm not armed, actually by the international law, they don't have a right to shoot you. Some airmen carried them, but I didn't. I never carried mine.
Well, you weren't going to fight your way out of
No, I wouldn't
out of
get
there
out of
with
there.
a 45.
No.
That wasn't going to happen.
But I can't think of anything else that you would be interested in.
Well,
Maybe you can think of something.
well, first of all, you just have the one son.
I just have one son.
Okay, Dwayne. First time you saw him. I mean, you had never.
I didn't see
seen
him till I got back in
Not till you got
September
back.
of 1944, and he was born in April.
What?
He was born just about the time we got overseas. We arrived over there in April, and flew our first March. We arrived in March, and he was born in April, and I made my first mission April 13th.
Can you tell me about the first time you saw him?
Well, I was so tickled to be home. I was so tickled to see my wife, and I'd seen kids before, and I was proud to see him. I was glad to see him, but I thought of my wife first,
Yeah.
and just so glad to be home. And I thought, well, my worries are over. But before the war was over, I thought maybe I might end up in Japan, because some of my outfit they were alerted to go to Japan, and it ended before they got there. And I always wished that I could have got 65 missions, and that's what was required. I was with the original bunch when they went. I was in the beginning of the bomb group, and I just thought, well, I wish I could say I got 65 missions in. I didn't, but I'm thankful for what I did do.
Well, I think what you did kind of made up for what you didn't.
It wasn't easy over there because I spent a lot of time hiding. It was really. I did the second place at the Koye farm, where I was a mile off the highway. I had more freedom. I could go outside and roam around set, and any chores that I could do, and most of the chore was finding firewood to cook with, because they didn't have anything else to use but wood. So we'd get out and gather up wood, and then when I was at the Poto place, which was the last place I stayed, we had to watch ourselves when we crossed the highway, but if we found it clear, we'd cross the highway. Michelle, I'm talking about the 4-year-old boy. We would go out and we could get in the woods. And in France, I don't know why, but it seemed like how all the highways and roads, the trees grow out over them. It's a big umbrella, and you get under there, you're like in a tunnel.
Yeah.
And we could find a place to walk, and we'd go there and take a walk, and we'd set snares trying to catch rabbit for meat. We caught a few in a snare. He'd just simply take any place where he could tie a real thin wire and make a loop, and then he'd put a little log or something where when the rabbit come, he had to jump over it and try to aim that loop at the right place where his head go in and grab him and see. That's where we would catch him. But the one place, Koye farm, where I was a mile away from the highway, he had a big wheat field, and I'd sit there and watch that wheat, the wind would ripple that field, and it'd make me think of an ocean, and it almost put you to sleep. And then I had a panoramic view of watching the planes go back and forth. And right after D-Day, you can't. If you didn't see it, I don't believe you could believe it. They look like flies up there flying. And I've seen planes come back that were shot up so bad, especially 17s and 24s. They were shot up so bad that if you weren't familiar, you wouldn't know what they were.
Wow.
And B-17s come back with maybe part of the wing gone, a stabilizer or the rudder blowed off, and they're still flying. And of course the B-24 pilots will argue theirs was the best, but I've flown in both of them in training, and I believe the B-17 would take more punishment. Of course the B-24 would haul a bigger bomb load and was faster.
That's true.
But
it was 17. There wasn't too much you could do to them to bring them down.
No,
they
they would just fly forever, and you didn't know how they were flying. they just would fly forever.
There are a lot of stories about
There's a lot of
the
stories.
punishment they would take.
Yeah,
And now
there is.
B-24, when they got punished, it knew it.
Yeah.
Went down pretty quick.
Yeah, it was a pretty bulky plane. But that B-17 was more designed to more streamline,
Right.
and it just would fly. If it had any power at all, it would fly.
Well, first of all, did you have anything?
What kind of medals did you
Yeah,
get?
what kind of medals did you get from your service?
I'll show you what I got. I got.
Hang on, you got the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You can just pick that up.
I'll just take it with me.
Okay, so we're showing the medal case. Handsome young fellow there. All right.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and point out and tell us what these are while I'm holding this.
Okay, these are my ribbons up here with my clusters that comes with the air medal. This is one of my dog tags, and this is a Caterpillar Club. It's a urban shoot company. If you make an emergency jump, they'll give you a membership, or not a membership, but a kind of a little, whatever you want to call this. I really don't know, with a little caterpillar down here.
Now, Norm Tiefel didn't show us the Caterpillar. He had the club card, but once you go down just below the card, you've got the Caterpillar itself.
Mhm.
I'd never seen that.
Yeah. And this is just a replica of my false ID card that I put in there. This is my Purple Heart. This is my air medal. This is
Don't
M.
go too fast, because I gotta find you here.
Oh,
before-
okay.
I gotta find out where you are before, I wanna see it all.
Okay.
Okay, there's your air medal. Okay, now then, what's the next?
There's
one?
air medal, and down here is the emblem shows you the emblem for the gunnery school that I went to.
Uh-huh.
This is when I was an instructor down at after I come back from overseas down at Biloxi, Mississippi. It was another AM school, but this is the 9th Air Force patch. That was the Air Force I was in, or Air Corps.
Okay.
This is just there's my wings up here, gunnery wings. These are emblems off my jacket. This is my rating, tech sergeant, when I come out of service. This is a little emblem that somebody from France sent me. It represents the liberation, 50 years of liberation in 1994 when they celebrated it. And I think that's covered everything, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I didn't know we had a picture of, your wife had a picture of it.
No, see what else?
Yeah, we can't get that on here, huh?
This one else, yeah. Yes, that would be fine. Oh, fancy frame and everything. Woohoo.
He's a good looking guy, wasn't he?
Yeah, no wonder you chased him down.
Let's see. I had one more question.
Any questions? Well, I'll be glad to try to answer them. I don't want to.
What would you say to the French kids today about your experience? If you were to address the young people of France today, what kind of things would you tell them?
Well, I don't think I have an answer to that. I just don't know.
Do you think they still appreciate what their folks did and the grandparents did?
The French. I wonder about it because when I went back in, I think it was either 78 or 81, I can't remember. Madame Killier took us back to the first place I stayed at when I hit the ground, Madame Lulu at her home. Of course, she was gone, but there was people living in her house, and out in front when we walked up, there were some young children or young kids. They were probably teenagers. She tried to explain to them that I was an American and I'd been shot in during World War II, and they kind of looked up. So what?
Yeah.
I don't think it meant anything to them at all. But my understanding is that, well, I know this for a fact. I've been out to the Anderson College to where she went to learn French. I think on three occasions, and a lot of the college kids, if they don't know, they're interested because they ask a million questions and really enjoyed what I told them. But if you walk up to a kid on the street, now even my own son, of course, he was born in 44, see, and he hardly ever asked questions because I don't. When I was in school and I had to take U.S. history, which everything in there was dates and things that happened before my time, I could have cared less.
Yeah.
And I didn't enjoy it until I went to World War II. Now I like to know about World War One.
Yes.
So the kids that have grown up here in the United States, I think it's the same situation in France or any foreign country over there. If they were not old enough to know about World War II, and there's a lot of them that just, they really don't know, and they don't even know how to ask questions, and like I say, maybe I shouldn't say this, but a lot of them just, they don't care. They don't seem to care.
And it's a shame too. I mean,
It is.
I'm listening to your story and I'm thinking, my gosh, those people, the positions they put
Yeah.
themselves in, they didn't
Oh,
have
yeah.
to do that.
They were laying their life on the line.
They
were.
could have just laid low and gone
Oh, yeah.
along with life
Yeah.
and waited for the liberation.
For $2,000.
Yeah, that's
turn-
right.
okay,
Yeah, that's right.
my output.
There were a few collaborators that did that. I know of a couple of cases where when I was over there, they took boys in and sat them down to a meal, and before they got through eating, the Germans come pick them up because they collected off of them. But I'll tell you what, after the war was over, they had a hard time for a while. I know what you've heard what they did to the women that
Shaved their heads.
shaved her head, and most of them were nude and marched them out of town.
Hmm.
Now they did that in Neuchatel, but I didn't see any of that because I was still out in the country when they did that. But I've heard a lot of guys that did see that, and all the French told me that's what they did. In fact, I keep thinking of things, and I don't want to hold you guys up all night.
You're not holding us up.
I just found out something recently in the last, well, I'd say 4 or 5 years. When I made my parachute landing and fell, I should have told you this before, and I didn't think of. When I landed there was a neighbor man, and his name was Roger Sardine. I'll never forget his name. And he was the neighbor to the farmer where I fell, and he was going to help that farmer work that day. This farmer where I fell was in the French army, and he'd spent 2 years in a prison camp. So when I landed, he had mixed emotions about taking any more chances
Yeah.
with me. Well, this neighbor that was going to help him told him, or talked to him, and he talked him in. He said, "I think you should help him. We should help him." So that's why he took my chute, and that's why I got help.
Right.
Now, there was a house right across that road where I was laying up here on the bank, right across the farmer's road. There was another little house over there. While they were looking for me, there was a couple. Their name was Debris, D-U-R-B-R-U-E, something like it, Debris. The man of the house was gone that morning, or that day that I fell, but his wife was there. And while the Germans were searching for me, this man by the name of, I forget things so quick, I can't think of his name, I told you a while. Anyhow, Roger Sardine. This man, she told this man, she said, if the Germans come here, said, I'm going to turn him in, me. And this Roger told her, said, if you do, you're a dead woman. So she didn't, I don't know where they went to her house, I never did know, but I don't believe she'd turned him in under those circumstances. But when we returned to France, and I'd always say, I want to go see Mr. Debris, the people say, he's no good. He's no good. Well, gee whiz, I thought he was. I fell right next to him, and I didn't have any reason to have anything against him. Well, about 4 or 5 years ago, this man where I fell, his farm, this girl that was 4 years old, well, she had learned all about the war from her folks and the fact that what they did for me, and she knew a lot about it, see. She wrote to me, and in one of my letters I wrote, and I said, does Mr. Debris still live where he used to? And she explained why. She said he was a collaborator, said he and his wife turned people in. And then after the war was over, they tried to be compensated from our government for saving people, and they didn't. And that one man saved this woman from turning me in.
Wow.
And I didn't know that. And the French people never did tell me that. except
yeah.
this girl, she's 4 years old, or 4 years old.
Wow. Wow.
So,
Yeah. It's so many things. It just could, if it just turned this way instead of that.
that's right,
My
that's right.
gosh. Wow, that's amazing. Who gets credit for all that?
I don't know. Well, I guess you have to put God in the picture someplace.
Yeah. Okay, well, we got him back, met his wife. What happened after that?
Yeah, okay, you went back, you went to work,
Step in
Oh,
here.
back to
Sure,
Delco,
come on
or?
in.
Yeah, come on in.
when I came back, I went back to work right away at Delco Remy. I worked about 2 weeks and they went on a 4-month strike. I remember that.
Well, that's awful courteous of them.
Yeah, and since I'd worked 2 weeks, I couldn't draw unemployment.
Oh.
So my wife and I, we left and went back down to her house because her mother was alone and her dad was gone by that time. And I got a job in a furniture factory at Candleton, Indiana, which is 3 miles east of Tell City. They make baby furniture,
Okay.
strollers and nursery rockers and beds they sleep in. They were pretty well noted all over. And by the way, a few years after that, the room department where they do their painting and varnishing caught on fire and it burnt the complete factory down, plus about a half a block or maybe a block of homes.
Wow.
But I worked down there until the strike was over and it was still operating at that time, and I came back here and went to work and
See?
I just wanted to
I retired in
answer a question.
I retired in 1982 and
1982.
1982. I
So
was
you had an answer?
Well, I heard you ask him what he'd say to the French kids.
Yeah.
We've had several of them over here to
yeah.
stay with us. And, honey, what would you say to Brigitte?
What would I say? Well, I'd say she was
Brigitte
one of the
spent-
sweetest girls I ever saw.
She spent one whole summer with us. And she followed him. She was, how old when she was here?
21 years old.
She followed him around like a puppy dog.
Well, she could speak English and we could talk and
And whatever he did, she wanted to do, and we still communicate. And we've had several from France. We've had a boy from Austria. We have had
had a girl from the Netherlands,
yes, one from Egypt.
one from Egypt. That's right.
But of all that we had, the girl from France was. She understood, and when we went back to France, we went to see her folks, and we stayed with them for several days, and got very close to her folks. And she's just a lovely, lovely person. And then on their 50th anniversary of the war over there, we had tickets to go at Vaughan. And he got sick one morning and he said, you know, I don't feel very good. And we were on our way to breakfast, and I think. And he said, I had pains in here last night. And I said, we're going to the hospital instead. We went up there, and then within an hour they had him at St. Bede's, huh?
Mhm.
Yeah, St. Bede's.
Yeah, they do it down there.
And he had heart surgery. So we did not get to go to France for their 50th
Oh, yeah.
anniversary. But my French teacher, the first French teacher I had, she and her husband went over. And they had been over several times before that because they became good friends with. And he didn't tell you, he never did tell you, but the Culiers became Mama and Papa to us. They became Mama and Papa to us. He forgot a lot of the sentimental part
you
that
can't
I
remember.
remember, you know.
You can't remember. I can't remember everything.
But that was what I just wanted you to know. That
Well, thank you.
I think he could find something to say to Brigitte. And she understood. She understood very much what he had gone through.
Right. Well, I just don't want the French people to forget
No.
what the people of that generation did
But I don't
Well,
think,
They may,
but
that's,
is France gonna come in there and help us now? Be one of the last ones, huh?
yeah.
I'm sorry to say, but I think that's the way it is.
I do remember that a lot of the GIs did not like the French people, but you got to stop and remember that the French people, in order to save anything, they had to bury it in the ground,
Right.
and they loved their wine. And they would even bury that in the ground, and a lot of the GIs, you know, they found those things and did away with them, which wasn't anything too awful, I don't guess, but you won't find an Evadee that'll ever say anything against a French person.
No, you won't,
And-
that's for sure.
I should have explained, I don't believe I did. A lot of times I'll tell somebody I'm an Evadee and they'll say, well, what do you mean Evadee? There is a difference between an Evadee and an escapee, and you're either a Evadee or escapee.
Okay.
Evadee is any flying personnel that's shot down over an enemy country or a country that's occupied by the enemy and is able to reach freedom without ever being captured. I was an Evadee. Now, by the same token, if I was shot down and was captured, but somewhere down the road I made my escape, which didn't happen very often, but I did make my escape, then I'm classified as an escapee.
Okay. I hadn't really heard anybody explain that.
Well, that's the way it was. And something else that, in order to protect the French people, the Allied governments had an agreement, and I've got a green paper still there signed. You were not allowed to tell only certain things about your escape, how you got, or not escape, but how you got away from without being captured. You were not allowed to mention names or places or just a lot of things that you could say and many things that you were not supposed to say for a period of 30 years. So the people that are writing their books now, that's why they waited so long. But a lot of them, that's why they waited so long, because they were afraid to put anything in. I don't know how that ever held you to that, but nevertheless you signed a paper to that effect. And you can look at my discharge papers or separation papers and you won't see the word Evadee on there. And when they interviewed me, I went on record as number 1795.
Or
Now somewhere they've got my name, but it's not where anybody can get it.
Huh. All the darn.
Did you ever hear of that?
No, no.
Yeah, that's right.
I
Never
never
heard of
either,
that.
honey.
1795. Well,
So how was the interrogation? I mean,
all they want to know is exactly what you did and what they did for you, and if you could give tell anything that would help the other flyers that were still flying what to do.
okay. But
And-
there was no hint that they were blaming you for anything?
Oh, no,
Okay.
no. Mm-mm.
Okay.
No.
Or making sure you were a flyer shot down as opposed to a deserter and who'd worked his way back?
Yeah, I didn't bring this up because I just simply, it's been so many years, I just can't think of it fast enough, but when I got shot down, the guy, I told you about the fellow that came out and wanted to know, wanted me to identify myself, and it was kind of confusing. Well, I found out later when I got up, I was up in this attic 2 weeks, the second place at Madame Lulu's, then went on to the farm where the Coyers lived, the third place. Roger Crescent, who was chief of resistance, he was the head of all resistance in the area where I was. He came out and took my photo, which I explained that to you.
Yeah.
But let's see now.
What were you gonna say?
I lost my train of thought.
What were you gonna say?
Roger Crescent. I lost my train of thought on that.
You were Courier?
Oh, here we go. I got it now. He came out. He brought a translator with him because he didn't speak too much English. And he said, the translator told me, he said, now, he said, we're not sure that you are an American. And I'd heard this before, and I know what they usually do. They usually ask you about sports. And I'm from the country, and I never played sports. I went to school, and if you'd asked me anything about the professional baseball
Yeah.
or anything, I probably couldn't have told you. And I was scared to death. And that's what they used a lot, was sports.
Yeah.
You know what they asked me?
What?
He said, where do you live in the United States? I said, I live in Anderson, Indiana. He said, what's the nearest big city? I said, Indianapolis. He said, tell me two major roads, one running east and west and one north and south. And I said, State Road 40 east and west, and 37 going north and south, and 65 going south. Or not 65, but whatever went to Indianapolis. I don't think the interstate was there.
67.
That's all he asked me. 67, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they didn't have to be worried about sports. If they did, I don't know.
You've been in
But
trouble.
there were a few of them that they got rid of because they thought they were somebody else. And what I really wanted to tell you, when I bailed out, at that particular time, the Germans were bailing out of airplanes. They had uniforms exactly like the Americans, flying suits.
No kidding.
They would jump out and pose as Americans or English or whatever they spoke, and they found a lot of French people that were aiding it. That's how they did that. So that's why you had to identify yourself.
Well, I think so.
Very
yeah.
important.
I'd never heard that.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know why I'm surprised by it, but
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
that's true.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is something.
And another thing I've thought of since I've been talking, have you ever heard anybody tell you, at first when the Americans first started flying over there, somebody like me or a pilot or a bombardier, they'd fly a light plane in a pasture field or just an ordinary field that they could land in and fly you out.
Okay.
Well, the Germans got wise to that, and they trenched all the fields. They dug a trench long ways and crossways, so even a small plane couldn't land.
Huh.
And the French people at first, they told me, said, well, you won't have to stay too long over here, said they're going to fly you out. Well, when I got a chance to see some of the fields and things, I knew they weren't because they were all trenched. You couldn't land.
I didn't know that
Yeah.
either. I knew they put up obstacles for the gliders
Oh,
coming
yeah.
out on D-Day,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I didn't know they
Yeah.
trenched the fields like that.
Yeah.
Well, you're just full of good information here.
Well, well,
Well, there's a lot
I try to
more
think,
tell
I-
if you didn't remember everything.
I've had, probably the one question that I've had asked more than any other is how did you have enough nerve to bail out of an airplane? Well, if it's full of bombs and you can't get rid of them and its fire is coming back on you, you would jump out if you didn't have a pocket watch. It didn't matter what it had. And that's why people jump out of buildings,
Burning
8 and 10
buildings.
stories. If they're going to burn and there's a window, they won't burn. Not in that building. They'll jump out. You don't even think about that.
Yeah, I was going to ask
You don't even think about it.
how close was that fire getting to you? Were you getting burned?
Well,
by it?
I had on what they call a K-pop suit. It's
Okay.
to keep you warm and it's supposed to float you in water.
Okay.
And I got hit right here in the thigh by a piece of shrapnel. But all my legs, it didn't burn, it just singed them. But we were out of the gunner and I'd say we were out in less than 30 seconds after we got hit, because I called it. When we got hit, that Bombay, the hydraulic fluid and wires were burning, and there's a little window about 18 inches long and about 8 or 10 inches high. And that's where you look in to make sure I can check to see if the bombs are in there and that the doors are open and everything's, like it should be. When that window blew out, them flames just come right in through. The Bombay doors open, but the bombs wouldn't go out because of the power outage.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because they were electric.
But when that air come up through there and right through that window, it was going right back on us. And a lot of it was going right up to the turret. I'm sure when he got out, he had to come through that.
Yeah.
Because I was going to try to help him, and he motioned me to go ahead, so I went.
Could you get to the Bombay from where you were?
No, that's
No,
what
you
that
did-
little
you did that
observation
one-
window was for.
One
The only way you
hatchet.
get the Bombay is underneath it from the ground, put the bombs in. That's why they had the window, because I always had to check and make sure the bombs fell and the doors were open and everything like that. That was one of my jobs.
Wow.
But when he came home, he had sent me a telegram saying when to be there and where. And so at midnight, I crossed the river on a ferry alone because my mother stayed with the baby. And I had to walk up this river bank through through the weeds actually, to get to the train. And when I and stood there and waited for that train to come, And you ask him about the first time he saw Glenn. Well, when we got home, Glenn was sleeping.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I walked up the riverbank. It was just weeds, high weeds. And I was alone, it was dark. And he was the only person to get off the train. And so we went back home, and naturally we weren't too eager to get in the house right away. But we went in the house, and he saw Gwen when he was sleeping for the first time. And they're very close. They're very close, and I'm especially close to Gwen. Yeah, I think not a lot of mothers went through what I did.
How
my
old
child.
how old was he when?
He was 6 weeks old when he was shot down.
Okay, but when he came back, how old was he?
Well, he was he was 6 months old.
He was from April till September.
Yeah, April, May, June, 6 months old.
No, he wouldn't have been talking very much
No.
or anything.
No, he wasn't talking.
No.
Well,
But my dad had passed away in the meantime.
No, well, you really had a go of it.
Oh, we did have. We had quite a go of it.
what
My
was,
brother was on Iwo Jima, and the other one was in the Philippines. And the day my father died, the headlines on the paper, that was the 5th Marine Division was on the way to the bloodiest battle of the war. And we tried to hide that from the paper, you know, from Mom. But
Yeah.
that didn't work very well. But it was, the war years were rough years at our house.
what was going through your mind when you got the call from him that he's coming home?
The first thing I got was a letter, wasn't it, honey? He wrote a letter to me, and I got that letter from him that morning. This is what was, to me, was disgusting. That I got his letter before I got a telegram from Uncle
The
Sam.
government.
But it was just a letter saying that he said he thought I knew where he was all this time.
Ah.
And he said, I suppose you know what situation I've been in. I think that's the way he just wrote a very short letter. And someone was going to deliver it for him.
Yeah, I met an
And
officer.
he said, don't write until you hear from me. And then when I heard and got the telegram to meet him, well, I did. And that was that.
Wow. Had to be a relief.
Yes, that was.
Did you turn cartwheels or what?
Well, I probably did a lot of everything. But I remember when we got news that he was missing, I remember reading it, and the next thing I remember, they were picking me up off the floor. My mother had called a neighbor to come over, and they were helping me up off the floor.
Did you ever?
I think that's going to be it. Thanks for letting me take.
Okay, we'll put another. This is 020045, tape 5, is it? Good. Now, where were we?
She was telling her story
I'm talking about
her
our-
brothers, I think.
Yeah, you told me.
My brother's just, one of them still doesn't talk about it. And the younger brother, the one that was in Iwo Jima, we together finally persuaded him to go to a reunion. And after he went to the reunion, he was very sorry that he hadn't done that years before.
Now, where do they live now?
They're still down south. My two brothers still live on the home
Canada.
place.
Well, we'd love to get the interview if they'd do it.
Well,
I
the
tried to
one
get
comes
him.
up quite often. His daughter's in Pendleton, and you might get him. He's a big talker.
Talk to him about it.
He might do it.
We'll be glad to.
And he's an artist, and he painted that picture,
Oh, we
putting up the flag, Putting up the flag.
Oh, yeah.
and gave it to one of his. When he went to the reunion, he gave it to his buddy,
Okay.
and then he painted another one for them to keep. And it's to perfection.
Does he know Jim Craig? Jim Craig's a realtor in Pendleton. He was on Iwo Jima.
Oh, well, his daughter lives in Pendleton. He's from down south.
Yeah, he's from down
He
here.
wouldn't, he doesn't know anybody in Pendleton except his daughter, my niece. But you might be able to talk with him about
Yeah,
it. He had
we'll
quite an
talk to him
experience.
and see what they say. She was telling about getting word from me and so on and so forth. There's one thing that I couldn't ever understand. When you're missing in action, like bailing out of an airplane, the government will only say you're MIA when there's maybe 25 people that saw you and they know you bailed out of a plane. And I can never figure out why they could say, well, at least we saw him bail out. He got out of the plane. But they won't do that.
Yeah.
It's strictly MIA. I know she'd have felt a lot better. You know, if she felt, well, he got out of the plane, we know that.
If it had gotten back somehow to the Germans, then they know to keep looking for you.
Yeah, that's right. They probably had a valid reason, but
But it sure,
yeah.
you kind of wonder how many spies
Yeah.
were in Rome.
Yeah, you never know.
I suppose it might have been a U-boat or two go down the Ohio, but
Yeah.
When you're talking about spies in Rome, you're talking about spies in about half of Fortville.
yeah.
And not even that big. 100 people maybe.
Rome was a
I'm curious.
place.
Was there any point at which you had it in the back of your mind that he might be dead?
Well, now that's a good question. No. My mother and I hung in there tight. And my best girlfriend, I adored her folks, just like my own. And I called him Pop, and he used to talk to me about how I would have to raise this boy by myself.
Mm.
And it didn't sink in, you know, I just didn't let it go in. I just didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And I never for a minute thought that he would not come back. Not for 1 minute. And I was over working for a neighbor, pitching hay, and my mother called over, I had ridden a bicycle over there, and my mother called over there and she said, all she said was, there's somebody over here wants to see you. And I know that bicycle took wings. And when I got home, it was a neighbor boy that had spent every evening at our house. And he had been a prisoner of war. And he came home, and he was there.
Wow.
And wanted me to come home and see him.
Yeah.
It was
Casey
that,
Crook. huh?
that was a
Casey Crook?
that
Casey
was a,
Crook.
Casey Crook. That was a moment of bittersweet. I guess a bittersweet moment.
Yeah.
I was so happy to see him, but I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what were you thinking about your family? Did you ever think, gee, I'll never get back to them? Or?
You know what my greatest fear was? After I got over in France, after I got down over there, in some areas, when the Allies were advancing, the Germans would put the population of the village, or maybe the small city, they would put them out in front. And I never seen this, but the French people told me, said this happens, and sometimes I thought, well, if I'm out in front with the French people, I might get shot, because they used them for protection, see. And I was afraid of that, I really was.
And I don't think he told you, but one time Mama, there were some Germans came right there, and Mama took their guns and put them in a cell.
Oh, yeah, I
Put
forgot,
these prisoners in a
that was
cell.
something I should have told him.
Really?
I forgot about it.
I didn't. I could hear most of what he was telling you in there.
I'll tell you right quick, after the place, Neuchâtel was liberated, there was 3 Germans. They came to, that was the night before it was liberated. They came to the farm there on the Poto farm where Mama killed you and Papa killed you, and their one son was there. And they said that they would, they stopped to get something to drink. And she said, do you know the war is going to be over right away? She said, why don't you turn your guns into me and I'll hide you and turn you over to the Allies. They did.
Is that?
And I was standing right there. And let me see just how this was.
They could have taken him instead.
This Alan Nickel was there with me. We were standing there. And one of the Germans asked Alan for a light to light a cigarette. And of course, Alan was deaf and dumb like I was. He had a card like me. And so this Madame Killius told the German, said, he's deaf and dumb, he can't talk. All right, so she put them in a cellar, took their guns and put them in a cellar, and put a lock on the door. Well, the next day is when, that was September the 1st, that's when the place was liberated. Here come the Allies through, and she went down the road and hailed them up there and brought these Germans out. Me and Alan and I were just talking up a storm, and this one German, he could speak a little bit of French, and I don't know how he said it, but he said it, I'll say it in English. He said, yesterday, that man couldn't talk. He was deaf and dumb. And Mama said yesterday was yesterday, and today's today. I forgot all about that.
That's good. Well, how do you feel toward the Germans?
Well, I'm going to tell you what I think. There were a lot of German soldiers that were doing what their country had them to do. They were just the same as me. They were doing a job because they had to. And they could be a little passionate with you. But if you got a hold of Nazis or the young youth, they were different Germans, different kind of Germans. And I'll tell you something else that if you haven't heard this, you'll be surprised to know, but you ask any airman and they'll tell you the same thing. If you had to bail out of a plane, or if you wanted to think about bailing out of a plane, you know what your greatest fear was? What? You hoped, if you couldn't go down and evade, that you would be captured by a German soldier, because if you got captured by a civilian, or especially if their town had been bombed, they come at you with pitchforks, axe, and they kill you in a minute. The civilian population were bad about that, because they were just so upset because you'd bombed their town.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I could see why.
But I've got a book. I've loaned it out, but I've got a book of a man that was American that was in a prison camp, and when the Allies went in and rescued him, they had to march almost 3 miles. They marched them into a village because they had better facilities and medicine and so forth there rather than where they were. There was a man, he was just almost immobile, but he tried to get in this, he did get in this group, and he was at the back end, and he didn't even get started good, and he fell by the roadside, and nobody noticed him or nobody worried, and they went on without him. He was found by a German family, then they took him in and nursed him back to health.
Huh. I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
a positive story.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
hear too many of those.
Yeah.
And when we were over there all along the roadside, we would see markers and sometimes statues, all kind of things to let you know that some civilians had been killed there. And some were killed just right up. We'd walk past them when we were at Mama's.
This, something else is a little interesting. When I come home, Laverne and I both, we wondered what we could do. You can't pay people like that. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
So we just sent them, I don't know, maybe it's $25 or something. We thought, well, they can buy food or do something with that. You know what they did with that?
What?
Over in France, on the graves, many times they put pictures. They got a picture. You remember what it says on there?
Well, I think it just...
Yeah, they didn't put a picture of me, but it was about this American and something, the way they felt about me. It was a quotation they put on there, and it's still on there now. I got a picture of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Then when Papa died, we sent some money over and asked him to put something, a marker on there from they called him their American son.
That's similar. That's something like that's what
Yes.
they put on this marker.
But they said they better not do that because he did have 2 sons. So they put somebody's American protege, I guess. Is what they said on there when they put a little American flag on it.
This is getting a little bit off base, but it's just I know you guys evidently like to hear a little something, so they had an older son, Maurice, the guy that came out and moved me to his home, and I went on little sachets with him across the country over there when he was going someplace and he thought it was safe. He got married after the war, and we'll never know, I don't suppose, but he and his wife and his parents had a problem. They got into an argument over something, fell out with one another. And when Mama died, Maurice was not listed as a son. His name was not mentioned.
Oh my gosh.
And the chief of resistance, who I talked about, he went to him and he tried to bring them together. The lady that taught Levere French from over at Muncie, she went over there and visited those people. She took a great interest, and of course her husband is a lawyer, and they could do this. They made several trips over there. She went and visited Mom and Papa and became good friends. And it was this 94 that she went over, and they had this 50-year celebration. She got Maurice, the two boys, and I said the parents, but also the younger boy would have nothing to do with Maurice. And she got them together and did get them to shake hands, but after that they said that was all. That we go no farther than that.
Wow.
The French
And-
people are very loving people, but they also,
When they get mad,
there was no in between with them.
Between.
No in between with them.
and Mama was,
And it broke our hearts because when I was over there, I thought, well, I can do it.
Yeah.
I can do it, you know,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't have tried.
my mother, my own mother was as good a woman as you could ever be, and she was good to me, but I was the last of 6 kids, so I wasn't anything new. And when I say this, I'm not running my mother down, but that French lady and her family showed me more love, because you don't go to bed tonight without getting a kiss on each cheek, and you get up in the morning, you get a kiss in the morning. And they always was trying to do something for me. And I thought, my land, you're
That's a French
keeping me
embrace.
away from the Germans, what else can you do?
But they
and
do
I-
one another that way too.
I asked her one time when we went back over there. I didn't ask Mom, but I asked one of the ladies, one of the men that kept me as a wife. I asked her why. I said, why did you risk your life to save me when you could have been shot? And she said, well, after all, you Allies were going to get our country back, and without you we wouldn't get it. So she said, if I have to die for it, I will. That was her answer. But Mama, sometimes she'd embarrass me because I was always her petite Gus. One petite little Gus.
My petite Gus. Yeah, my petite Gus.
Levere asked her one time, you asked her, said, did my husband run around with any women?
Yeah, I asked her if when he was over there, if he had associated with them. And Mama said, no, il était toujours ici. He was always on her arm. He was always
They
on her
were
arm.
they were a lovely family. They just, I don't know, they act like they hadn't had a chance to do anything for anybody, and they did everything they
Well,
could.
they realized, you said we couldn't do enough for them, but
Yeah.
we did more for them than they.
But their house got bombed in 1940 or 41 and destroyed their house. The Germans took their car. They took their house that they were living in after it was bombed in 40, and before we landed on Normandy, the second house, they took that house away from them and were living in it. And they just,
They're good cooks.
and it took, the Germans at first would take the rotor out of the distributor, and the French people would take the rotor out of the distributor thinking, well, the Germans couldn't drive their car. Well, that was no problem for the Germans to get a rotor. So then, one man, his name was Flambart, he did a lot for me over there. He didn't, I didn't live with him or anything, but he was real good friends of
He's the one that gave you clothes.
Right, he gave me clothes
He was
because
big
he was
enough.
near my size. But he had a truck. In order to keep that truck, he completely disassembled it. He had the engine hid in the barn, he had the frame hid somewhere, and he had the body someplace, and he had the wheels and tires in someplace. And did he ever have fun after that was liberated to get it all put back together, and there was no fuel to drive it, he said.
The But he was a clown, and I loved him. I fell in love with him immediately. He was so. He would help me. He would try to help me with my French. And,
Well, tell him what he gave you.
oh well, over there, you know, we've learned that don't ask where to find something because they're going to go get it for you.
Yeah.
And I did ask Mama. See, they use little demitas, these little tiny cups. And I asked somebody where I could find them. And Serge was there for dinner that day. And so after we finished eating, he said he wanted us to come on and go down to his house. We just walked down the hill to his house. And he opened a cabinet. Over there they have, they pay taxes on certain pieces of furniture. So they have big closet doors that open out, and they kept their dishes in. And he did at least. And he said that had not been opened since the war. And he told me I understood what he was saying, but I pretended not to.
Yeah.
He said, go over and help yourself. And Mama's sister was there, and I was so crazy about her. And she was funny. And she just went over and motioned for me to come over, and she said, he wants you to have some. And he gave me a set of 5 cups and saucers. And then just like I could walk across the street and bring some more home, we brought another set home for this fellow in New Jersey.
You wanted him to have a set too.
We had to mail him a set. But, and one time they were playing some music that we thought was beautiful. And we asked where we could find it, and Mama's sister said, oh, they don't make that record anymore. But the next time we saw her, she had one for us. Yeah. And Mama gave me old dishes of hers and some old napkins and a lot of things, good memories.
She gave you a big coin with your birthday, with the
Yeah.
year you was born. This Sarge Flambart, he was, like she said, he was so comical. And when you sat out on the table, if you got water, you had to ask for it, because now these people that Mom and Papa, they would drink. They weren't really wine drinkers. They would drink about that much.
Yeah.
But they didn't serve water because they just don't drink water. So they found out we liked water, so they put a pitcher of water on. Well, this Sarge Flambart, he was invited in along with some other friends. He saw that water, and we were getting ready to eat, and he picked up the water, and he started watering all the flowers. They have flowers everywhere. He said, that water's not fit to drink. He did that kind of a guy.
And the first restaurant we went in over there, I think was the first one, was in Germany, and we asked for water, and we didn't think we were ever going to get a glass of water. And then when we asked for the second one, they said, no, they've turned the water off.
They wouldn't give you water. They
They
wanted you to
wouldn't
buy
Well.
something else.
So we had cups in the car, and if we ran onto a spring, we always stopped.
Yeah.
Because there we got good water.
Yeah.
That was good cold
We
water.
found that water to come down off the mountain. It was good and cold.
Oh,
We drank
I bet.
it. We didn't have any trouble at all.
So Mama would buy a bottle of water for us, and then they said, well, take the lid off and swizzle it, they called it, to get all it, what do you call it,
Sediment.
fuzzy taste out. Yeah. Tasted more like 7-Up, I guess.
Something else that I remember, we rented a German car because we landed in Frankfurt, Germany when we went back in '74. The French people forgive, but they don't forget. And here we drove up in this German car, and Mom and Papa didn't say too much, but Michelle said, "Get that thing around back." we had to drive it around and get it behind the house.
And the next day, he went with him to turn that car in.
Yeah, we turned it in the next day.
He didn't want to drive down with us in that German car.
Wow.
But their cars over there were small, but they were so comfortable. Very comfortable. Very comfortable.
You said that you almost wound up in the Pacific.
Yeah, because some of my outfit, the war over there was over in around September 45, I believe. And of course, the Japanese hadn't surrendered yet, and a lot of them they were getting ready to ship them over to Japan, but the war ended before they got there.
How you feel about the dropping of the atomic bomb?
Well, I think it saved a lot of our people. I know we killed a lot of people over there, and it was a horrible thing to do, but I tell you what, I found out one thing from talking to other people and from reading. I read a lot. I can't keep it up there anymore, but like I said a while ago, the Germans, the ordinary German soldier was compassionate like anybody else. And it was only a few of them, like the ones you call the Nazi and the German youth, the Hitler youth, they were mean. But all the people I've talked to that fought in Japan said, no matter what kind of Jap it was, he'd kill you if he had a chance. And they said the Japs were so much, in the camps were so much meaner.
But you didn't answer his question.
Well, I think you did. And I mean, it's the fact that
In a roundabout way, you did, I guess.
yeah, because I've heard this from so many people, and it's hard to get across to folks that
Yeah.
it wasn't a good thing in the fact that
No.
it wasn't a pleasant thing.
Yeah.
But overall,
Something.
you look at the millions of Japanese who were saved by that,
Mhm.
let alone the Americans who were saved by that, because they would have fought to the very end. You get on a place like Iwo
Yeah.
Jima, you saw
Yeah.
that.
There was a guy here in town. His name was Charlie Chapman, and he was an airborne trooper, and he dropped into St. Mary Église just before midnight on June the 5th. Well, he fell in a pasture field right close to St. Mary Église, and he said he was hurt. He hurt his leg or he hurt his foot or something, and he said, well, he couldn't see any of his other. They had these snappers, you know, they clicked.
Clickers, yeah.
And he said he clicked and he couldn't get any answers. He said he wasn't going to go do anything till daylight. So he waited till daylight. And when daylight came, he went in to the edge of town there, and there was just a little old street going down there. And he said, well, he had to find somebody. And he started walking down this street, and here come a German around the corner. And they both passed one another and saluted and went on. And he said, I didn't know they were going to get shot in the back, and that German probably thought maybe he was going to get shot. And they both knew who was who, you know.
Oh, gee.
And when I come out of France, we were hitching rides on any vehicles going towards the English Channel, and we got off one time because the truck was going north and we wanted to continue on west. And we just sat there, and there was probably 5 or 6 guys, and I remember there was 2 or 3 guys come up that knew each other, and they made the plans in their head right there that after the war was over someday, they was all going to get motorcycles and come back over and tour Europe. But a truck come along and had some prisoners on there. And I think there were 3 German prisoners, and there was Alan and Nickel, myself, and a couple other guys that were in the infantry, and they had been captured, and they'd been walking 2 days back towards Germany with these 2 soldiers. And the second day, they had all stopped on the side of the road, and they had got into a field and had some turnips. And they were sitting there and eating turnips, and these 2 guys, I didn't get their names, but one of them said to the other while they were sitting there eating, said, my land, said, these Germans shared cigarettes with us, and they had some bread they shared with us, and they share everything, and said, they haven't been pushing us, and we haven't been pushing them or anything. Said, I believe we could walk away from them. And said they were sitting there, and they didn't have their guns because they had taken their guns and done something with them, but the Germans had theirs. They went over and they started shaking this guy's the hand and pointed in the other direction. And he said, I don't know if they knew what I meant or not. Said, we just started walking away, and said, they turned around and looked, and they were. And of course, I guess they realized the war was over, and what did they have to gain but taking 2 soldiers in? It's about like they were. So it's a lot of unusual things I've heard that happened.
But this Charles Chapman he was talking about, it was a very, 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 very patriotic person.
Oh, very patriotic.
And his granddaughter wrote one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard about her grandma. But anyway, Charlie said that one day there was a little Volkswagen rolled up into his driveway and says, Charlie, I'd like to talk to you. And And he said, well, you get that out of my driveway and we'll talk.
And he was serious. He was.
And he was serious.
Yeah, yeah.
It was parked under his flag, you know, and he didn't want that Volkswagen. He was a very patriotic person, and so.
When Mom and Papa came to visit us, that was in 1976. There was a guy, a retired man down there, a fairly young guy. He'd been 20 years in the Air Force. And he married a German girl. Well, they were standing out in the yard, and Carl, the husband, waved, and they walked down. Well, since they walked down, we had to introduce them. Boy, as soon as these French people heard her voice, knew she was German.
Mom and Papa came in the house.
They just kind of turned their head, and directly they
Mom
walked
and
away,
Papa
and they
came-
left. They
Mom
were
and Papa came in, but the younger.
And she said over and over, we forgive, but we don't forget.
Yeah.
And her 2 words Mom learned to say, never forget.
Yeah.
So he had a pin made with never forget on it and send it, Mama. And
It would be hard.
now we're seeing that flying again, aren't
Yeah, that's true.
we? We never forget. But those were 2 words Mama could say. And that one family, the girl was over here that we were so crazy about. We went to see her in Alsace-Lorraine. And she had 2 brothers.
Oh, yeah.
And they were so funny. And the one boy, the only thing he could say in English was, it all depends on the flexibility of the cow's tail.
That's all he could say.
That's all he could say in English.
Yeah, I thought about that a while ago.
And I don't think we ever taught him anything while we were there.
Well, that's something to learn.
He could say
Whatever
that.
that means, I guess it's all right.
Well, Jack, you got anything else?
Still need to find out about their son.
About our son.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
What's
he
become of
knows
him?
all about our son.
Well, we do, but it's not on tape here. What became of your son?
Talk to him. He's a veteran.
Yeah, what became of your son?
Yeah, okay, talk to him, put the camera on him.
What became of my son?
You mean from the time he came home, or?
Sure. I mean, just
Well, after I came home? Well,
We just raised him the best we
we
could.
just raised him the best we knew how, and my wife always wanted a little girl. She wanted a boy and a girl, and the doctor told her after she had the first one that she shouldn't have any more. So I guess that's why we took a lot of girls in here to stay when we had a chance. But
But
I'll have to say that I don't want to brag. Don't mean to brag. He's a boy, and he got into a few little incidents, but I couldn't have had a better son.
What's he doing
And
now?
He's a barber. Yeah,
Cut
he's a
his
barber.
hair.
and a good one.
he was
yeah.
a beautiful baby,
Yeah.
and he was sick a lot. But he overcame everything, and my dad used to. He said we put Gwen in a playpen, and my dad had several strokes, and he'd sit in his rocking chair beside the playpen and keep Gwen entertained while I was helping Mom with work, you know.
He's a boy that he never gave us a bit of trouble. And one very unusual thing about him, when he was little, you could take him in the store, he'd never ask for anything. He might stand and look at a toy half a day if you'd stand there with him, but he would never ask for it.
Huh.
He never did ask for anything. He doesn't ask for anything today.
To
If
this
we give
day,
him anything, Dad, Mom, we don't want that. We try to,
Help him out a little
instead
bit.
of, we just give them, if the occasion comes, we give them a little money to buy something with rather than go out and buy something that we don't know what they want maybe. And he don't want to take it. He's just that way. But we say, well, we've got it now. Maybe if it come a day we won't have it. You better take it while you can get it. We can usually talk him into it. But
But he's
he
stayed,
he is a very good fellow. And I haven't ever heard anybody say anything against him.
and he went through a hard, very difficult time.
Yeah, he did.
For
He
several years, and
had
he
some-
still is. And he has kept his faith through all of it, and that I'm thankful for. His wife now has you probably don't know, and don't tell him we told you. Oh well. It was-
It's gonna be kind of obvious if you say anything.
But she has a brain tumor, and it's inoperable. And she has a rare skin disease. It's called Darier's disease. And it's like poison ivy, and it covers her body. And it's going in, and it's affecting her nerves. And when
I
it
hate to
hits
see
the
that.
nerves,
I met her once, and she seemed like a very nice.
Oh, she is.
Sweetheart.
What's her name?
Tara.
Tara.
And when this hits her, it's like an electrical shock. And she is a sweetheart. And she was so good to his kids. See, he's put 3 kids through college and got 1 more to go.
Yeah.
He's got a 12-year-old. Because she was never, she had been told she'd never have any children. And she got pregnant right away, and she had to go off all her medication, and had a tough pregnancy, but had a very easy delivery, and got a good little guy there. He's just he's sports-minded like his dad.
Yeah.
His name is Kevin, and he's 13 now. And he's a wonderful little fella.
Couldn't ask for more.
And then
Couldn't.
we've got 2 great-grandchildren.
No, you couldn't.
Had a good life, haven't you?
I have.
We've had an interesting
I've been
life.
pretty fortunate.
Yes.
We had some hard times, but we made it through. And other people had hard times too. We weren't by ourselves, you know.
I've really got a lot to be thankful for. I keep thinking of things. I don't want to keep you guys here all night, but
But
when I think of it, I think of it often. When I was out in Woodward, Oklahoma, we were going on a cross-country flight one morning, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, they come from the orderly room and woke me up and sent me and another guy down to the flight line. At that time, I had to do mechanical work, and we had to pull the cowling off of an A-20 and do some work on it. Well, I was supposed to leave with a guy by the name of Albert Fox. He and 2 of us were going on a cross-country flight, and we were going to make our first stop at Oklahoma City because he'd sent a watch in for repair. And like I say, they woke me up at about 4 o'clock in the morning and told me and another guy to go to the orderly room and to the mess hall and get our breakfast and report to the flight line. We had to pull this cowling off. So we didn't get to go on the cross-country flight, and this Albert Fox took 2 other guys, and when they left the runway out there at where we were, why, fog was pretty bad. But they radioed and found out it was clear at Oklahoma City, but when they got there, it was foggy there too. So he come in for a landing, and he wasn't quite over the runway, so he started to go around again. Well, by that time, he'd lost airspeed, and he stalled. And he and one of the guys in the back were killed. Only one survived, and I was supposed to be on that mission.
Wow.
And I might have been one that survived, and I might have not been.
so there's been a lot of
And we was out over the Gulf of Mexico one time when we was down at DeRitter, and we had a bunch of ducks. We had them buried back in the front of the leading edge of the wing about that far, and all around the engine nacelle, it was all full of ducks. And
Yeah.
of course, that didn't give us any trouble. We got down all right, but
Well,
I keep thinking of these things.
yeah. You dodged a bullet or 2 in your
Yeah,
life, haven't
yeah,
you?
I was lucky a lot of times.
when I went to, I don't remember whether it was Biloxi or Gulfport. Where were you before the war?
Before the war,
Gulfport.
was Gulfport.
Well, when I went to Gulfport, I went down all the way down there on a troop train.
Mm-hmm.
I was the only woman on there. And I sat, I was pregnant. I sat on the arms of the seats. I was not offered.
Nobody.
No, not one time.
Well, I'm surprised.
And when I'd get fainty feeling, I'd go out in the end of the, outside the door.
Between the cars
and
there.
stand out there to get some fresh air.
Wow.
And then I'd come back in. And when I got there, he had been given a pass to come home.
Oh.
And we couldn't find a hotel to stay in.
Sat up in the lobby all night.
So one man finally said, well, there's a couch back in the back, If you'll go back there, you can sit on that, and we stayed there all night and left and came back home. But that was a rough trip going down there
I'd reckon.
with a bunch of soldiers.
Yeah,
I don't need to say more, I don't guess.
yeah. Yeah, they,
I was younger then.
I think somebody could have treated you a little better.
Yes. But then they were, I understood. They knew.
Well,
what
it
they were
was a
doing.
troop train, and
Yeah.
It was a tube train, and I don't know why I was put on that, but I was. But I guess all the trains.
it just
then were
had to be
tube
going to
trains.
my base, and that's all you put on.
I guess
Yeah, that's
most
probably-
trains then were tube trains, probably.
Probably so.
I don't know.
Posterity.
Okay. We always give our veterans a last chance to say a few words for posterity. Any kind of wisdom or advice you want to pass down to the generations to come?
Well,
Uh,
I don't know what.
He's not very good at giving advice.
I'm not very good at giving that. I'd say any young people that's, of course, I tell you, I was going to say any young people that have to go in the service. There's a lot of good that you can get out of it, and it depends on what kind of a person you are, because you're in a situation where you can do a lot of negative stuff, or you can do a lot of positive stuff. And I thought the service did me a lot of good, but you don't fight like you used to. The wars nowadays are not like they used to be.
Yeah, certainly are different.
Because I thought I got an education out of school. I got a lot of good out of that, and I met a lot of nice people that I would have never met. I would have never gone to France. She would have never gone, probably. There's a lot of good that came out of my experience from being over there.
I don't think that part's changed.
And pardon?
No.
I don't think the weapons are different, but the soldiers are still soldiers.
I think they are.
And I think if someone befriends some of those soldiers over there, they'd have the same, similar story to
Oh,
tell
yeah.
when they came home. And it's just that it's a different kind of war.
You were exposed to a lot of bad things, and if you were the kind of person who wanted to take advantage of it, you could, but you didn't have to do anything like that. I had a buddy, we'd go on pass, he didn't drink, he didn't smoke, I didn't either. We'd go to the shows, go to the USOs and things like that. A lot of guys wanted to go in beer joints and find their fun there, and maybe a lot of them still turned out good, but
But I think we better tell this generation to live it well and to get a good education
yeah.
and to have the very best, do the very best they can in life.
That's right.
Because we don't know what tomorrow brings. Not even sitting here, we don't know what tomorrow brings.
Sure don't. Sure don't. Well, I want to thank Bob Raper for helping us.
Bob's a peach of a guy, I can tell you that,
There it
if you
is.
don't know.
He is. He is. He's a
a
good
wonderful
neighbor.
He's
person.
a good neighbor, I bet he is.
Wonderful person.
He would do anything for you. In fact, I hate to go say him because we both like the same thing. We like to mess around with wood and be making something that don't amount to anything, but we just like to do it. And he's got a shop like a hardware store, and he puts
Yeah.
stuff in my pocket, screws, bolts, nuts.
He's something else.
I was over there today a little while.
He's a wonderful person.
Well, Sergeant Bubenzer, I want to thank you for this interview and for
Well,
your service to our country.
I thank you. I saw your ad in the paper, and I thought, well, do I want to do this or not? And with a little encouragement, I would, and I think that's what I took. I don't mind talking about my experience because mine was not horrible like a lot of soldiers went through.
It was very interesting, but it could have been worse. Certainly could have been worse.